Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Ashes of Eriador Roundtable Q&A. How's everybody doing today? It's a pleasure to see you. We have a not quite here yet Mirggles. Mirggles will be here soon. But we're here now for you, and we are here to chat, shit, and hang out and answer questions. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions about.
I should have worn a beard.
I'm just loving the reactions.
Hilarious.
I'm loving the chat reactions right now from people who thought that Meyer and I just always have ginormous beards.
Yeah. I should have worn one today.
Go get your wig and just put it on your face, and then you're set.
Yep.
No, I'm all set.
Welcome on in, everybody. So, I thought we'd start the Q&A off today, with
Thanks, Meyer.
Any questions or anything that you all may have. I mean, you can feel free to get started with that. We've got our mods in chat that are going to be collecting some questions. We've got a document kind of behind the scenes. Actually, let me give that to you guys as well, that you can check out.
Thank you.
But I thought we'd start the show off with some of our favorite moments. If we can talk about some of our favorite moments, if we could each pick like a favorite moment that we had.
I'm going first.
All right.
Because I don't want the moment to be taken by somebody else.
Oh, sure. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So I think it's the second to last episode. That whole thing. That nothing in my mind will be more Lord of the Rings than that. It was nuts. Well, hello. Sorry, my cat is here also visiting.
The tail just pops up.
Yep. It's like...
Can I ask specifically what your, I guess what grabbed you?
Well, I mean,
that episode.
Okay, so I guess the reason why I'm choosing that episode is because we had a lot of moments in the show that were Lord of the Rings, but that entire episode felt from start to finish like it could have been in a film.
It's a wonderful compliment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you.
I mean, just the pacing, the music, the rescue that came in at the end. It didn't feel like it was fan service at all. It just fit. Everything was perfect. It was fucking great. And the last episode too was amazing. But I walked away from that second to last episode like on a high. It was so good. So yeah. That's what I would choose.
If you think about it, every good moment in all of Lord of the Rings is someone showing up at the last second to save the day. Happens like 15 times throughout the franchise, so it's kind of fitting that one of our best moments was the same way.
Yeah. Oh, and my second favorite thing was the finale, where we basically had a bunch of fade to black endings.
Oh, those are so great. I love that.
Yeah, it was
time
good. Sorry.
skips and jumps.
There was a Meyer did something in that last episode where he was kind of trying he was trying to do like a natural fade to black for all of us. I'm like, oh, and like PB was like, we need to end it there. Like, you know, she was typing in this. Oh, that's good. Like, or is this where we're ending?
I didn't want to end it. I just thought we were, because the way the music was swelling and blah blah blah, and then it faded, and then we kept going, and I was like, that's hysterical to me.
I was like, oh shit, no. There's like more holes, like plot holes. I want to close up a little bit here.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah.
I have one. I have one.
Go for it.
It's from a ways back. It is a combination of a few things, but it's when we were at the homestead, when the dead were coming at us. It was that episode was really, really interesting because, I mean, I think our characters were still learning each other to a degree. You know, you watch the Fellowship as we continue, and that sense of family and loyalty and trust and stuff, it just kept building and building. In that moment, it was such a, well, we could all die, or some of us can die. Hell, maybe Piper is dying. We don't know. She's fucked up. But then when Rioth pulls out that gem, because I'd forgotten about that fucking gem. I'd completely forgotten about that gem. And he pulls out the gem, and it, rolls well, and this magic just sort of spread out, and we lived. We survived. And this is coming off of, all that stuff with those, was it the dune landings? Or there was all that stuff that we were dealing with. There was so much going on, but it was such a lovely moment of hope and warmth after so much shit. It's one of my favorite moments because I really felt this warm connection in and outside of the show. It was just, I don't know, there was something about it. So that's mine.
Who's next?
I don't want to take any moments in which I was actually a part of it. You know what I mean?
Why not?
I loved.
Who cares?
I loved that episode.
I loved every scene I was in. God, I fucking killed it.
Oh man. But I did love that homestead. Yeah, with we basically had a horror episode, with the dead coming and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
and,
yeah, that was so good.
That was really cool. I almost felt bad actually during the episode for pulling out the MacGuffin, and the MacGuffin actually worked. I was like, oh no.
So I don't know if you remember, I was trying to hint at it a little bit as a potential. Yeah, I was trying to do it, and I feel like you are really good at picking up on those really subtle cues. It's just one of those things that you're very talented at, and I just dropped the barest like hints about it, and you were just like, you knew instantly what I was talking about, and I was like, fuck yeah, like that was great.
Well, and Lord of the Rings is all about MacGuffins.
Thank you.
No, it's all about, but even though you feel, the ring itself is just this, this device for these scenes. I don't think there's anything wrong with having something special, Aragorn's sword. There's all these items that exist within the world, and this was just another one that no one ever really knew too much about. Almost a casual magic that must exist in Eriador that we got to see work. I think it was great.
I love how Wack also built Tharbad as well, because there is a magic regardless of I think the system when you're in a new world and you're not too sure what anything is, and in the discovery of just like some smaller minor things. I wouldn't say that the trolls were necessarily minor, but like following their path and all the things that kind of led up to us finding the trolls in the first place was really, really cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
You mean like Edward?
Dude, I was about to say it.
Terrible name.
Terrible name. That was my favorite fucking running joke.
Oh yeah.
It was my favorite running gag by the end of the series too, and I don't think in character I ever said it either. I just every time I knew, I was like, here they go again. Here they go.
You did a lot of setup for us, though. You did set that up for us a couple of times at least.
Oh man,
terrible name.
Terrible name.
I was sitting here trying to think of a favorite, but PP beat me to the punch. I thought the second to last episode with that whole setup, and then being able to finally get that huge emotional release from my character was also huge, and then Gandalf showing up at the end, like everything was so spot on that it's hard to top. But for the sake of not duplicating her answer, and since she already took the clear correct answer, I figured I'll give you a miniature greatest hits list instead. I was sitting here thinking up a few of them. Confrontation with the sea serpent. Loved that whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Not just for the combat sequence, and I'm a sucker for a great action sequence, but I also love the the best part of that moment for me was the brief hesitation on the water before we fought, where we kind of looked at it as we're probably going to die. And then I think it was Gandalf, observed that there were other people like drowning in the water. And it was like, well, we have to fight the serpent or it's going to kill all these people. Yeah. And there was that brief moment of, all right, are we really willing to die to save all these total strangers? And the answer was yes. And then we went and fought anyway for a fight that we didn't necessarily win, but the thing retreated at least. But I thought that character moment of, all right, collectively as a group, are we all willing to actually just die for people we don't even know? And the answer was yes. And I think that was a huge like character defining moment for everyone.
And not the only time that it happened.
Not the only time.
At Weathertop, Jesus.
Yeah.
I will also cite the whole rescuing the hobbits from the Dunlending camp. That entire sequence to me was really fun because it was incredibly well paced. It let the hobbits showcase their own creativity and competence, that there's more to life than smashing things, and watching them talk their way out or sneak their way out in various ways of getting out of the camp. And then of course getting to use the the character enchantment thing, the magic awe roll at the end for me was like really satisfying to run into the camp just and then of course and once again it comes down to someone showing up in the nick of time to save the day. But in that case it was Rio like coming in with that Bararuk Kazan at the end of it, like flying off his horse and jumping into the fray when it was looking like it was going to be me versus like 9 guys. And it's like the my man moment was perfect right there. Those were a couple that came to mind.
There was a lot of like Rioth and Anduin like predator handshake moments,
you son of a bitch.
Buddy cop moment. The whole thing was a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
If I may, one more. The other greatest hit moment was being able to spend a whole day just screwing around hunting with Gwyleth, because it let me showcase the fact that Anduin is in fact just a big kid. No one asked through the whole campaign how old he was. He was only 28.
Whoa!
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, he was so well traveled despite his short years, like from leaving home and seeing so much of the continent, that I felt it like I needed to portray him as being like world weary and wizened despite his age, so he always like he spoke with authority because he's like, I've seen this stuff myself.
Yeah, doing age reveals now.
But yeah, he was actually just
please.
I think he was younger than all the hobbits, right? How old were the hobbits?
Yeah, 33.
Yeah, 33. Yeah, we just became
adults.
all
just had our birthday 1 month after the other, and Piper's was last.
Yeah.
So physically the biggest, but Anduin was the baby of the group the whole time. But I was like, I don't think he would come out and say it unless asked, and no one asked. So I kept that up the sleeve for the whole run.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it was the other thing. You don't ask the age of your elders, and I think that's what he felt like. He definitely felt like this person that you could listen to, you could trust, who has, and he had gone through a lot of shit. That wisdom isn't tied to age, and I think those wrinkles and scars would still show at that age, because he lived such a tough life. But yeah, 28. I wouldn't have guessed.
28. What this is to the Loremaster, to Whack. What day did we start the campaign, and how long did the campaign actually last for? Like, in months?
So
that was a question as well that somebody in chat asked too.
Yeah, so let me I stopped updating the calendar after a certain point. Let me see. It is a good question.
We should have just kept going, what day is it? Every single.
Yeah. So
how much time has passed?
It was
Blade Runner flashbacks.
So this is let's see, rest at Weathertop. Okay, so I updated it up until then. So it was basically some of you started at the very beginning of July, the equivalent of July, and it ended in October. So it was about 3 months. Well, like 3.5 months, basically. Now, the system itself kind of calls for like longer periods of time in general. If you stick pretty heavily to the mechanics and stuff, and you really, really take into account every day, and you get really down to the nitty gritty and like really measure the travel time. It's pretty hard to do when you're doing like an improv live show, to really like figure that out and keep it entertaining and shit and like have all those calculations worked out live. And I didn't really feel like it was super important to the story. So I wasn't really too finicky with it.
Okay.
Because technically, they're very fucky with time. If you read the books or if you watch the movies, they're very fucky with time. I don't know how many of you know this that have watched the movies. If you read the books, you might know. But the scene where Gandalf, in the very beginning of Lord of the Rings, meets with Frodo, and the time where he goes to Gondor, studies, figures out that Frodo has the ring, is actually 17 years.
Yeah.
So Frodo is 33 at the very beginning of the movie, and then when Gandalf comes back, he's 50 years old.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same in the film though. Like I think they keep him 33 for the film. I think they just changed it to happen all in that year because it's a more action-packed. It's the pacing.
People can't wrap their head around the fact of like how far
Yeah.
Gondor is and like how much research Gandalf had to do. You know? So like I don't know what his age is in the movies. I don't think that it is. I think that he is supposed to be 50 because Sam is 33. I think lore wise, or no, it's a 12-year difference. It's something like 12 years, I think.
I wonder if canonically they actually go ahead and say, okay, we changed their ages, or if it's just like, for sake of ease of cinema, like the time passes, they just don't make any mention of it because it's not.
So it's been a long time since I've read up on this, so I don't have a link or a source or anything available, and I would have to go look it up to double check. But I do recall vaguely reading somewhere that the amount of time that Gandalf spent researching in the movie script was shortened to like 4 months instead of 17 years.
Okay.
So he does leave for months of research and comes back, but they trimmed out the whole gone for over a decade part.
Right.
Or at least that's what I recall reading somewhere. So I don't think Frodo's intended to be 50 in the movies.
There's also an amount of time, but I don't know where this falls, where Gandalf was looking for Smeagol, right? There was a time period where he was aware of Smeagol's presence, and some level of significance, but he couldn't find him.
So yeah, the books and the movies, the lore is quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So like, Gollum is basically captured across the Misty Mountains, and there's a lot of stuff there. I'm not going to get into everything because I'm going to definitely get it wrong. Before we started the campaign, I like read up for like 2 weeks. Like I was really getting in there, and there's just so much information that slowly but surely it's been leaking out of my brain because the amount of like nuance and little bits of info that happen in the story is crazy. Like that was the thing that Tolkien I think was best at, was just all of these different things were happening at the same time, and he was keeping track of like everything. Yeah, there was a lot of weird time stuff. So
speaking of weird time stuff, does anyone want to guess how old Ruth is?
Oh, I thought you were gonna be like, when is Mirggles gonna get here?
Oh wow.
Oh shit.
160 years old.
I was gonna place my guess about 180 based on.
He was at the battle. Wasn't the battle
40 years.
Battle of Five Armies wasn't that far in the past.
It was about
We
40.
were only 40 years past it, but I assume by then he already had to have been an adult to participate. And if he held any kind of high station and served directly under Dane Ironfoot, then he was probably like a well-regarded elder already by that point 40 years ago. So I would say just shy of like, but then it's what, like 300 years is about the life expectancy for dwarves in Lord of the Rings?
250 to 300, I think.
Yeah.
I'll put him at old. I'll say 200 or 220.
I'll say 180.
Yeah, and I'm at 160.
Is Whack guessing, or does Whack?
No,
know?
I don't. I don't.
He's seen your character sheet.
Yeah.
It's exactly this.
To be fair, I know for a fact Meyer told me the exact number, but it was like 6 months ago, and I can't remember. So, I am guessing.
Okay. So Ryuth fought in the Battle of the Five Armies, but also prior to that, he also fought in the Battle of Azanul Bizarre in the east of Khazad-dûm, which was a lot longer
Wait a
ago.
minute. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. There you go.
So, Ryuth initially fought in the Battle of, well, not initially, but time is, as Loremaster Stephen says, or Whack Stephen isn't his name, time is fucky. He fought in the Battle of the Five Armies, alongside the likes of Dane Ironfoot and Gandalf. However, he also fought in the Battle of Azanul Bizarre, in the east of Khazad-dûm. Now, he fought alongside Dane Ironfoot as his page back then. Dane himself, not even a stripling at the time of the battle, arrived towards the latter part of this Pyrrhic victory against the goblins and orcs of the mountain. Dane was, again, nigh an adult, about maybe 30 or so years old. Ryuth very close in age as well. At the end of Ashes of Eriador, Ryuth is, well, it's October, so he is actually 222 years old.
Bitch!
He was 221 at the beginning, and I wanted it to be a nice triple number at some point.
Wow.
So 10 times my age.
He's
Nice.
old.
A
Yeah.
little old.
I love it.
My favorite moment is probably a toss-up. I think one of my favorite moments is when I first introduced Strider to you all.
Oh, yeah.
And actually introduced, not hinted at Strider, but when Strider actually was introduced. And Mirggles wasn't here. That
Yeah.
which made me feel so bad. But I was like, it has to be now. I can't not do it now. But yeah, and then Mirggles came back the next week and got to
whispered in her.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the other one was probably when Toddles chose to save Timber.
Oh,
That was beautiful.
That was a pretty crazy,
That was a really great moment, yeah.
That was a beautiful moment. I was like, that right there encapsulates why hobbits are important to these journeys, and they keep everybody sort of sane and human, and like they're the moral compass for everybody. And despite all that stuff that happened and the fact that they were kidnapped and they were going to be essentially slaves was not important. You still have to be a decent person despite all of that. So that was a pretty big moment. I remember being touched by that. I was like, that's beautiful.
It was a very fun moral quandary.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
We had the most hobbity of hobbits as well. Like, they were consistently hobbity, and I loved it the entire way through.
The
It
ending
was
to that
tough
sequence.
to try to find that balance, of being like, because if you look at the films, right, there's maybe 1 or 2 moments where Merry and Pip aren't Merry and Pip, where they're not being fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's like, and in the beginning, I think it was a lot harder for me personally to find that balance between being absurd and then, like not being absurd, I guess, during all of that. But I think specifically about the Toddles saving or, making that choice is the opposite of PB. Like every instinct in my body was like, oh yeah, cut his head off, dude. The guy like can't be left alive. But yeah, I was like, oh no. You're not driving, Pumpkinberry. Sit down.
You had more of an impact on my character there too than I think you may have originally realized, because I was 100% going to execute the man with the classic return to nature, the same way that you saw at the very beginning of the campaign. But like as I was about to do it, I was like, now hold on a second. Freaking Toddles and Launton are right here. Would I actually murder this man in cold blood with what are like not children, they're adults, but like they're
like just watching it?
No, like the wide-eyed innocence of the hobbits.
Stars in their eyes.
It's very childlike, they're supposed to be innocent and childlike. That's part of why they're portrayed as being so small. And I was like, would you actually just murder a man with your kid next to you? And I was like, I don't think I could. So yeah, that was why I had like Anduin not execute the guy, and then afterwards being able to say I didn't because I knew you would save him was I do wonder if I had actually murdered the guy. I feel like Whack would have slapped me with shadow points if I did.
Oh, absolutely. I don't see why not.
But yeah, that forced me to reconsider Anduin's brutality early on and soften the character a little bit, because I was going to have him be much more prone to violence, I'll say, as a first solution to many things. And I was like, I don't think realistically I could play that kind of a character when I've got the hobbits in tow. Like he wouldn't be able to. He would just see them and be like, fine, we'll do it your way.
From a GM perspective as well, those watching that, are watching Whack and learning how to GM, that's a great example of a moment where you're rewarding a player for making a difficult role play decision. Because I made that choice and then Whack turned around and was like, get rid of all of your shadow points, which is that's nothing in the book that says that, other than maybe it's at the GM's discretion. But now that we bring that up, that's a good example of when Whack rewarded me for making a difficult and sticking to my character, what my character would do.
Being a GM is tough, and I'm not saying this to like, self-aggrandize or whatever, but it's like there's a lot of things to pay attention to. The way we do things on Tablestory is also very tough, but there's a few things that you always have to try to focus on. No matter if you miss some details about rules, whatever. One of the things that I think is the most important thing that you can do as a GM is to try to reward your players at the right times, when it's like, when they do that, I'm sticking to what my character is going to do, and I think that this is very much in the right with what they would do, despite what's going to happen to the group. Unless you're kind of being like just contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, that can get a little annoying. But like when you're, when you make tough decisions, like you should be rewarded for that stuff. I think that's played up a lot in movies too. We see that happen in movies. If you watch a movie and somebody makes that tough decision, it's usually a big scene, and it's the memorable scene that people take with them when they leave. The scene with Aragorn and Legolas in The Two Towers, when Aragorn says, "Then I shall die with them." That was a powerful moment. Like you could see, like it affected Legolas. That's when he recognized, I think, a little bit more about how Aragorn felt. And that stuck with me. Like I remember that moment very vividly. So I think that's one of the really important things you have to do as a GM. You have to try and make those moments worthwhile for players.
That's the other thing too, that you don't want to just reward your players for, playing the way that you are encouraging them to play, because that's one way that you can give experience or whatever when you notice somebody is, remaining in character or whatever, and you want to give them a reward. But another thing is like when a player is choosing to do something that is what their character would do. And like Wax said, they're not just trying to be a contrarian. They're trying to commit to what their character would do, and it might disrupt the party dynamics. That is incredibly stressful for a player to do. So giving them some sort of reward in game is a way to offset that, like either guilt or stress or, oh my God, everyone's going to hate me, blah, blah, blah. It's a way for you as the GM to kind of like keep aware of their emotional state as well, which you have to do. I mean, you don't have to, but good GMs are aware of people's stress levels at the table as well. So it was just a good moment because I was absolutely stressed about that and was not expecting anything in return. And he just wiped all of that shadow, which ended up saving me at the end of the game because I had no shadow. So I was able to be that hope battery. Yeah, sorry.
I also think that it propelled a lot of story, like interesting story moments because you did that.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, oh, now we have these really cool interactions with Timber, and like we see a different perspective, right? That's one of the things that I always love to do in my games is I love to give. I hate it when it's black and white, when it's just like we make this. These are the bad guys. These are the good guys. I hate that. I'm like, when is that ever a thing? It's like psychopath versus, sane person, like, how often does that happen? Really? Like, I like to have the dimensions. I like to have a reason behind the choices that NPCs make, that people make, because that's what happens in real life. The Dune Lendings have gone through a lot of bad stuff. Yeah. There's a reason.
If ever there was a world where there is a very clear good and evil, it's Middle Earth, though.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Very true. I think there's a lot to be gained from a nuanced presentation of your villains, especially with gray areas. I think having a villain where you think, he kind of has a point, that's great from a storytelling standpoint. And I think as a player, it's fun to interact with those kind of characters. But there's definitely a time and a place to just have the bad guy be unrelentingly evil so we can murder him without hesitation. Because you don't want your players always feeling guilty when they're about to kill the bad guy, because I think it can be overdone. If you overdo it to the point where we're always second guessing and hesitating because we're not sure we're in the right, eventually you kind of lose a sense of purpose.
There's a balancing act, I feel like, on both sides, from the game master deciding whether to reward such actions, but also for the player to decide what they're doing is the right, not just because their character would do it necessarily, but also, is this the right time for that kind of thing? Because there are times when people will play their character the way their character would be played and can derail everything completely. And that's not what happened here. And again, it's because there is thought going into every action. It's not just, oh yeah, my character's violent, so they're going to kill this guy, or they're going to kill every guy, So I think it's commendable on both sides, PB and WAC, doing that thing. And again, it humanized Timber. It brought a very interesting and somewhat difficult conversation on the table, especially for a tabletop RPG. It's a very interesting place to kind of hash out certain things that even in present day is difficult for people to reasonably discourse about. So kudos to everybody as well for keeping it in character as well, and not necessarily letting that aspect of it come into the game as well.
You mean managing to casually slide a capital punishment debate into our role-playing game? Yes. Even as we were having those conversations, I was sitting here thinking, man, I know exactly what my character would say, but I don't want to be crucified. I was like, I'm gonna make some people real mad if I just have my character answer with exactly what he's thinking.
Go ahead.
We also had that in this game where we had, Timber being, kind of gray area, but then we also had enemies that were just fucking evil. So we could go at it with no worries and concerns. But yeah, it was good.
My favorite enemy line was with the trolls, when the last troll was like, I'm invincible. And then the next turn, I lied. I was thinking about that for weeks.
I think Middle Earth as a setting, because it has so many monstrous types of individuals. I think in a lot of cases, most of them will come across as being black and white. I'd argue the majority of the like antagonists throughout the whole franchise are pretty irredeemably evil. It's actually less common to see a nuanced gray area character in a world where the battle lines are pretty usually very strictly drawn between good and evil. So Timber was like a nice breath of fresh air to make you think a little bit about, what is he does have a point,
Just, I know, Wack, you're getting ready to ask something, and I just need to throw this out real fast. Talking about the trolls and everything else going on, I took shadow points for falling into troll shit.
You did.
I forgot about that.
That's right. That was another great moment. Holy shit, that was so good.
Holy shit.
Get it? Uh-huh.
You just never know what's going to happen.
I remember as that happened thinking, I was questioning because I was questioning the decision because I'd read it in the book and it's like shadow points, witnessing grievous, horrible acts, finding your whole family murdered, watching people starve to death on the streets. It's like these may cause shadow points, and you're like, you tripped and fell into some poop. Take shadow points.
I will say that I will defend the choice to do that, mostly because Tharbad
there were
was
human bones in it. There was like people in it.
Yeah, Tharbad was such an eye opening for the hobbits. They were like, oh my god, I didn't even know a place like this could exist. And falling into a pile of shit I don't think he's ever seen to that size, was just like. It was like a physical representation of just all of this muck that lives over this place. And with his, with Launton's like wander, I can't remember what the thing is, his, like the bad side of whatever. The further he got from home, the worse it was going to get for him. So, I mean, that was a pretty hard moment. But anyway, I just want to bring up the fact that Launton fell in shit. So... And he did.
Thank you
so
for that.
There's that will always exist.
It was very good.
I don't know if we should do this at the end or if we should do this now. I get probably later when Mirggles is here.
Okay.
But something to percolate on is questions that you all have for each other or me or whatever. Think about those as we're continuing here today. I think we should probably do those near the end.
I gotta do one now while it's still fresh. Sure. Whatever happened to Timber? Did you write an ending for him?
So there's... How do I answer this?
Find out on season 2 of Ashes.
So there's like... So the answer to that is kind of tied into what will probably be asked by other people as we go on through this. Because there's a lot of stuff that could be asked here for this show. We kind of changed directions pretty hard in the show, like halfway through or so. And, I know that is going to bring up a lot of questions. So I don't know if there's a way I can answer that without like kind of giving the answer to something else now. So maybe I'll save the answers to that a little bit later. And I'm not going to forget that because there is an answer to that. Okay. So I'm going to start with some of the questions from the viewers. We had some stuff from Discord. I would also like to remind chat, you guys can ask questions in chat as well. Keeper and Piranha, thank you so much for doing the excellent job of moderating like you usually do. We appreciate you so much. And they are keeping track of questions and they're adding it to a document for us. But we've got some questions from Discord. 54 aqua snakes for me. What did Piper need to roll to break her curse? Gandalf room. And that was Aaron that made that roll.
Yeah.
I decided...
I rolled a 9.
So when I started this campaign, I decided that this was going to be a sad campaign. I knew from the beginning that I was going to aim...
Of course he doesn't tell us.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him at all.
The GM of Doom, what did you expect?
I didn't know if you'd pick up on it in general just because of the timeline. Because a lot of us did like a lot of Lord of the Rings in-depth like research. I
read all the books.
Yeah, like early on because we didn't want to fuck it up. I remember one of the early comments on YouTube was like, please don't fuck it up. And I was just like,
no pressure.
I was like, thanks. That's already what I think all the time when I do any show. Please don't fuck it up. No
like
pressure.
I feel like that's a comment that you keep to yourself. You know, you go, man, I hope they don't fuck it up, but you don't put that on YouTube.
Yeah.
Can you go to YouTube, PB, and write that underneath? I think that's a comment you should keep to yourself.
Yeah.
Make a Stalin account. Make a Stalin account.
I mean, I'm of two minds of it, right? Because on the one hand, I'm like, yo, you should not be saying that stuff. But on the other hand, a comment that still lives on a folder on my computer for when I'm having a bad day is, I hate Rin more than Stalin, which somebody said about my character in Darkfire. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Which, by the way, PB will be replaying tomorrow on the Shill Show as me, Brad, PB, and Technique are going to be playing characters from previous shows in Baldur's Gate 3. So hopefully check that out tomorrow here on Tablestory. We'll be doing
and
our...
you too can hate Rin more than Stalin.
I have yet to go back through the logs and watch Darkfire, and now I feel like I must to understand.
Oh, dude. Yep. Everybody hated her. It was good.
That was good. For all the cast, and this is also from 54 Aquasnakes, confused as to did Launton and Toddles go with Rio and Anduin on their quest, or did they go back home?
Do you want to answer this, or should we leave it?
That's a great question.
I felt like it was pretty clearly answered. Was it
I
not?
thought so too. I thought so too.
I thought
Wait,
so
what?
too, but...
Wait, you don't think that... Okay, hold on. Because I think we all have a different idea of what happened.
Oh
Okay,
boy, this got interesting.
Yeah.
I thought I knew the answer.
Yeah.
I do. Okay, I sort of have an answer from my own perspective. From the very beginning, PB, Mirggles, and I had some conversations about our hobbits, who they were to each other, what they meant to each other, and it was family, right? That's what that was. When Piper passes, she had mentioned home and her parents. I think as much as Launton and Toddles would probably want to continue with their new family, they would have to go back and tell Piper's parents. I don't see them getting around it. I think that was probably, of all the journey that they went on, that was the hardest one.
Yeah.
To go back home without her.
So in my timeline, they did that after she passed, because there was time that passed between her death scene and the time where we all met together at the tree. So in my mind, they went and they told them in that time frame, and then when they came back and met at the tree and he said he had a quest, at least Toddles, in my mind, went with them.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I totally thought it was just going to turn into a buddy cop movie, because my understanding of it was Gandalf was volunteering to take them home, and I thought he meant like after that funeral procession was done, he would make sure the hobbits got home safely.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And then we journeyed all the way back to meet everybody again, to pay respects.
See, well, yeah, as we've already established, time is messed up. See, I saw that as happening afterwards, after the funeral.
Day or something, yeah.
So
now I mean, hearing all these interpretations of it, it totally means that Anduin and Rioth set out on their second adventure, and like 3 days into it, we just turn around and Toddles and Lontar are standing there like, wait, what? How long have you been?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait. Woo! Yeah, that was us.
In my mind, the way I interpreted it, like, after Piper passed, then Rioth went on his quest, and then Darwin said, you're gonna need, like, somebody, and then so they went together, and Gandalf took the others back, because they, the hobbits could have come back this way again. Yeah. It's improbable because of how we almost died 8 times, but they could still do it.
I think actually with this, I think there's actually a canon answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Only they must have gone back home to tell the parents, but then they left the Shire.
Yeah.
Because I don't think
I can't imagine.
I was always wondering, like, how could that story
be there after her?
Yeah, but how could that story exist and not, the Lord of the Rings being what it is, and us trying not to fuck it up? The whole time we are thinking about our actions and our choices.
Yeah, and how they affect the rest of the story. It wouldn't make sense for them to be in the Shire when Bilbo and Frodo and all that shit was happening, or
and
somebody
telling
would have said
our stories of the serpent and the trolls, and like
they would have been shunned anyway.
Over the top. I do like the idea that they went home.
Yeah,
and they told her parents, and it was probably just the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Well, because too, if you look at like Hobbit culture, they absolutely would have probably blamed them for the death of Piper. Like, this is why you don't go out of the Shire.
This is why you don't go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why good hobbits don't go on adventures.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I imagined, because that conversation with Rioth and Toddles where he said, I can wait a few more years, I assumed it was like, we'll stay with Piper until she's ready to pass. They go home, they tell everybody, and then they all, kind of go off together. But that was my interpretation. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I would make that, considering how I thought like 5 minutes ago, I like that way better. I love the idea that they continue to adventure.
So
into Rioth's nonsense, which I want to know about.
Well, there's also, sorry, Whack, there's also one piece for Toddles specifically, I think, in that if she goes back to the Shire, those people aren't going to remember Piper the way that Toddles experienced the hero Piper.
Yeah.
She might tell the story of Piper, but, when you lose family like that, I feel like Toddles would want to be around her new family that she found, because they will all know and remember and keep that memory of Piper alive together. So yeah, I think it would be important for her to be with Rioth and Anduin, and hopefully Launton as well.
Yeah, Launton would have gone. Way back, I had actually seeded the idea that there was a girl that he was interested in the Shire. It's sort of a mirror to Samwise, and but yeah, there's no way in hell that would have happened. Like, he wouldn't have. I don't think he would have recognized himself anymore, and wouldn't have felt like a worthy person for someone to live such a nice, simple life.
Sad.
So yeah,
it's so sad. So here's the way I saw it. I wanted to hear what you all thought first.
Okay.
But the way that I imagined it going, and keep in mind when we're doing these shows and when we're trying to.
I'm sorry.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
Hi. Sorry. Continue.
Okay.
When we do these shows and we wrap them up and stuff, as a GM, you always want to like close up all the plot holes as much as possible. Like, it's always, that shit always sits in the back of my mind. Like, God, I really wish I could have done something with that or that or that. We're limited by time and what we can do and what we can actually fit into a show, and
improv. What comes up, sometimes it just doesn't go the way that you're hoping, so that you can wrap things up the way you need.
Yeah. So like, it was kind of hard for me to kind of convey what I imagined, but hearing what you all said, I'm glad that it went the way that it did and that you all had your own interpretations. I generally like that. I like when people have their own interpretations for how things go, when things are left a little bit vague. I love the fact that so many different stories can crop up from someone's interpretations of what happened, like that discourse that can happen where you're like, well, we don't know that that's what happened. They didn't really give you the specifics or whatever. I love the premise that our creativity helps other people create. Like, that's such a wonderful thought for me. I love that. My intention when I was doing it was that there was a period of time before you came back. And I love the concept of you going to the Shire, telling them what happened, and not feeling like you can stay there. So now you're going to go on a new adventure because you can't stay there. And the people that have kind of become your family are the people that you're going to go on this adventure with again. And it's like you're going on an adventure for a different reason now. And maybe you go through Rivendell on your way back, like you left the Shire and now you go back to Rivendell, and that's your starting point now. It was your end point before, and now it's really your starting point.
As you say this, it kind of dawns on me that I hadn't really thought about it till now, but it's funny because the hobbits end up having the same kind of mental or like emotional epiphany that Anduin had in reverse. Because my story starts off with me feeling like I can't stay at home anymore. I'm not welcome here for one reason or another. And so Anduin leaves, goes on an adventure, finds acceptance, and then I was thinking of recording a narration of something or something along those lines at some point to tell what happens to Anduin afterwards, because I already...
You froze for a second. Continue. I want to hear this, but you froze.
Sorry,
and it was funny. Yeah, you're here.
Oh yeah. So I already had planned how Anduin's story ends if he lived through the adventure, because I didn't know what Whack was going to throw at us at the end. But like, I kind of already have like the next 50 years of Anduin's life planned out afterwards, and so I already know where he was going next and like how his story was going to end, assuming that we reached the end of this. And it's funny because, anyway, like I was saying, the beginning of my story is leaving, feeling unwelcome, finding peace, and returning home. The hobbits had peace, they've left home, and now they feel unwelcome. So we've had like this reverse growing phase, I didn't really see that until hearing you guys talk about it just now, and I think that's really interesting to show how their like mental state in regards to how they feel about home has been completely polar reverse between the two characters.
Yeah.
It also, I think, mimics a little bit of what Bilbo expresses when he comes back to the Shire. And though he stays there for a while, he ends up saying, like, they'll never understand, like, I feel a little disconnected. Yeah, like
you just, yeah.
It's like going and seeing the whole world and then coming back to people who just have no concept that there's anything outside of their neighborhood.
That was literally me at 19, joining the military from a small town, and then coming back and going, oh my God, like it doesn't even feel familiar anymore.
Yeah.
It's really sad to think about the hobbits having to deal with that. If you ask me, Piper got it easy.
I think it's sad, but also in a way it's like incredibly beautiful. I think it depends on how you look at it. It's like they don't feel like they can go back to the Shire necessarily and live that life, but like they found family, they're seeing the world, and yeah, some of it's ugly, but they still managed to find incredible beauty in it. And they're gonna see, they got to see Rivendell, they're gonna see like all sorts of other stuff. They're helping their family, complete quests and things like that. I feel like that's a reward of itself. I feel like if you look at it through this idea of education, they weren't educated. So them learning more about the world and becoming educated isn't sad.
I mean, yeah, they learned about some sad things that exist, but those things exist whether they're looking or not. So I think, yeah, I think it's good.
Hi, Mirggles.
Hello. Hi.
Mirgs, we did some of our favorite moments from the show to start things off. Since you have joined us, I'm curious what yours might have been.
You can't answer the second to last episode.
No. I heard that part because I was listening on the train.
I was going to say you got a letter, and I wanted to see if she would say the same thing first.
Yeah, I should have shut the fuck up.
Well, actually, like I think the first thing that popped to mind was something that was from the second last episode, which was Launton singing. And I think the reason why it's my favorite is like, it's one thing to have like a very Lord of the Rings overarching narrative where Gandalf and Arwen come in and we have that like big moment, Helm's Deep kind of Gandalf coming to save everyone moment, where you have that release of that tension. But there was just something that was really powerful about having this established beat from the very beginning that was like, we had discussed that we wanted to do songs. We knew from the beginning that the hobbits sang. There were songs that were written in the first episodes. There were songs that were sung at different points in the journey, but nothing like that. It is kind of like the Pippin moment where Pippin is singing over the horrible images of what's happening in Denethor, but it was like way more powerful too, because I actually thought that he was like gonna die. So it was just a really beautiful thing to see this like very stark representation of what it means to retain an essence of yourself in the face of extreme darkness and all loss. And this idea that these hobbits still found something to sing about, and that still found a way to help us and keep us strong. Yeah, it was such a beautiful moment. I think that's definitely up there for me. I know it's from the second last episode, but
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really had no other things available to me. And I'd sent Whack a message. I was like, "Is it okay if I sing?" And he goes, "Yeah, if you wake up." Yeah, it was such a like okay, but I do appreciate that. We can thank Chat GPT for that song that I was frantically I was like retooling the song over and over and over again because I wanted it to start slow. I wanted to have a beat that picked up. I didn't know if it was going to match along with everything else, but that's what I wanted the song to be. I just love the idea that, when things are shit, things can still get better. So I was like, a Hobbit song with this. No. And I needed to sound. And I was like, I finally got these lines and I was like, I don't know what the beat's going to be, but fuck it. And then I got to do it slow, and then I got to pick it up, and then I got to do it faster because I figured that's probably something that hobbits do with their songs. I mean, they can be on the tables and sing a song a certain way with the tankard in their hand, but they can also sit in the corner with a friend and sing it solemnly at the same time, and it's the same song. So it was fun to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, last Socratic. Both for Whack. Were there different endgame scenarios you imagined when you started the campaign, and how were they different than what happened?
All my dreams. I can't wait. Go.
Oh, God.
Is that ever not the case as a GM, though?
Yeah, it's especially true for this campaign. So I struggled so hard with trying to figure out what to do with this show. When we got started with this show, before we got started with this show, just figuring out what I wanted to do with the story was so fucking tough, because there were a few beats like in the trailer that I hit that I was like, I loved a few of these lines that I used. The greatest story never told. What have I done? I have just set myself up for disaster.
You wrote yourself into a fucking corner.
Well, you also said greatest story never told, which makes me think that they returned home and didn't share the whole story.
Which actually was same in the back of my head the whole time was no one's really going to know. So how is that going to work?
Yep. Well, we say, yep.
I put so much freaking pressure on myself.
Yeah.
It messed me up so bad before the show started. I was fucking frantic. What am I gonna do? So I can't remember when it came out, but when they released the expansion for the game, for the One Ring system, the Ruins of something, I don't have it open right now. When they released the expansion, they put a lot of like story stuff in there. And when I saw it, I was like, guys, don't read this. I was like, don't look at it. There's nothing in here. There's no extra character stuff. This is all lore. I was like, I don't want you to read this. If there's anything lore appropriate, I'll like give that to you. That you'll have to worry about. But like, it was a lot of lore and there was a lot of stuff, and they have a timeline in there. Ruins of the Lost Realm. They have a timeline in there for like what goes on in between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And there were a lot of things in there that I really liked. But I remember the process of creating the show, and I was really stuck for a name, and I was like, I want the trailer to look cool. A lot of production shit, right? I was like, maybe I'll come up with the story as I'm making the trailer and like I'm doing all this stuff. It's just one of those like production things that I think happens for me. I don't think it happens to PB and Brad. I think they have like a really specific story in mind. A lot of times I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? And I was struggling a lot, and I was like, man, I really like, we focus on what in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? What do we focus on? And it's usually the ring, right? Like we focus on the ring. So my mentality was like, we need a ring. We need a thing.
Yep.
We need a thing. So when people were kind of brainstorming their characters a little bit, and Meyer was making Rioth, he's like, I want to make a dwarf and blah, blah, blah. I still hadn't worked out the story really yet. I was like, I just started with a time period. And it was like, let's do it the year of Samwise's birth. And the reason I chose that primarily was because that's when Theoden becomes king.
Yep.
So that was the whole reason that I did this time period, was Samwise's birth and Theoden becomes king. Those were the
Does that mean that your initial ring was the helm that he was looking for, and then you just switched it? Sorry, my brain just malfunctioned. Switched it to, I'm, but A plus, because I feel like, again, as a GM, you might have an idea or a goal, and to address Wack's clear vision, I may or may not have something in mind, but everything changes episode 1 or 2. And then I'm like, well, throw that out the window. Let's rewrite it. And that happens every couple episodes. So
he should have put us on the trail to the helmet before Piper and I derailed the entire story.
No, it was
something
perfect.
Else.
It was perfect. And I think that they can still go find the helm now. Like, in my brain, that's the next journey.
So
so good.
It was part of the reason it was called Ashes of Eriador. I was like, this is going to be about fucking dragons.
And wait, what?
And we never
And we never got.
And we never
did it. So Ashes of Eriador was the title.
Next year for
Ashes of Eriador was the title because dragons, and because of the fact that Eriador is crumbling. It's dead. It's dying.
Yeah.
So that was the whole reason behind the name. It was Ashes of Eriador because I was gonna do a thing with dragons, and I wanted to introduce different kinds of dragons. That's where the water worm came from. It was like, that's going to be the start. That was going to be the start. And then
Yeah, that's why they called it the Leviathan. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I had rough stuff planned out because of the nature of the system. It's really hard to do a lot of these shows when you haven't played the system a bunch and you're not like super comfortable with it. You can't really...
It's a very RP heavy system as well, hugely. So like it was really cool to see you just like, you know, adapt that and like add little mini games and stuff that didn't exist in the system to kind of facilitate things to do.
The combat, the many different combat scenarios, it was all so interesting and so fun. And I will say I struggled at times with the clunkiness of the system or where the information was provided. But I will say this, that I have not sweat as much you know, in D&D combat as I did during the combat during the show. Like, it was almost at a high level
at every fucking
time.
You got hit once.
Yeah.
Or like
and
twice,
I just
maybe.
they did a very good job with the combat in this game. Like, I really felt like, holy shit, my life is on the line every fucking time. It was very good. And also whack, because you did things that the game doesn't lay out for you in the book. Like, you presented the chase scene, you presented the horde combat, you gave us every single taste of like varying types of combat throughout this journey, and it was fucking great, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to expand on what you were saying, just for maybe the audience who doesn't understand the numbers, like the mechanical aspects of the game. I'm a number cruncher. You may have noticed. I have had a lot of fun with this campaign because it gave me a whole new system to dissect and look into from like the strategic standpoint of it, and it's basically like the high percentage chance of effectively getting critical hits in this system is kind of where it comes from. I wanted to explain this for the audience. What we were calling a piercing blow happens it's like 15% of the time at a base value and can be upgraded through abilities that you get later. The really high percentage chance of getting crit, and then the incredibly nasty side effects of what happens when you get hit by a piercing blow in this system can like put your character out for weeks on end. And it's also a system that doesn't have like healing magic either, so there's no like getting back up in combat. So like every fight in this whole adventure is super tense, because at any given moment, anytime you're trading hits with anybody, you might get crit. And if that happens, and then you roll the severity of the injury and it's a bad injury, like you're screwed for weeks in game, and you can't heal it up. So like every fight is just so like the sense of mortality with this system is incredibly strong compared to like any other system that I've played. It was super intense. Even the most tame encounters where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna wipe this encounter easily. Oh, piercing blow, maybe not. Oh man, is he gonna lose a limb? Like it's beautifully done.
Yeah. And the music. My God, the song that's playing right now. So Lord of the Rings, I'm gonna die.
Well, he was talking about combat, so I had to pick something to support that. I'm glad that you enjoyed the combat. I was really struggling with it. Honestly, it felt like it was really tough. I didn't know what I was doing with balance, like throughout the entirety of it. When they fought the trolls, and I've said this a few times, you might not have seen it, chat, I'm not sure, but I've talked about it a little bit in various places. When they fought the trolls, they should have died, honestly. 100. Like, the trolls are some of the very hardest enemies in the book. No joke.
Yeah, and you were like, there's no shame in running. Like, you gave us every warning to like be like, some fights you don't want to stay for.
So the highest level enemies in the book are level 10. The trolls were level 9.
I was well aware. I was well aware going into that fight that we were perhaps biting off more than we could chew, which is also part of the reason I was so hesitant. For like, even in character, I was like, yeah, it's trolls, we probably shouldn't bother. But you know, the hobbits weren't having it; they forced us into it. So that was interesting. I think, mechanically speaking, the scaling for this system is also kind of wonky, because from the start to the end of the adventure, your health pool never goes up.
Yep.
Your armor rating never really increases unless we have a successful adventure where we pick up a bunch of loot and go back and physically buy an upgraded armor set. Your armor doesn't go up, your health doesn't go up. The only thing that really goes up is your skill level, and that mainly applies to your weapons, so you hit harder. But outside that, it doesn't really change much, and I think that's part of the reason why we were able to fight the trolls early on, because they were an endgame enemy, but realistically, like, we would have had the same health at the end of the adventure that we would have had at the beginning. We would have had the same armor ratings. It really just comes down to hoping you don't get like I did the math. It was a 16.6% chance of a crit from any basic enemy, and when you have 4 or 5 of them swinging every turn, like you do the math, that you get hit a lot. And the enemies that had like the keen trait, the crit jumps up to 25%. That's a 1 in 4 chance that every strike is going to be lethal in this system. So I think it's more heavily reliant on just, I mean, it all comes down to the dice in the end, I guess, with every one of these games. But in this one in particular, you are even more kind of at the mercy of the dice rolls, because you can't really put together like min-maxed broken character builds aren't really a thing in this system. You can't really break the game that way. Believe me, I tried. So it's like fighting the trolls was just pure luck, honestly, the dice rolls being in our favor.
Yep. Okay. How many months ended up going by? We talked about that. It was July to October. KJL asks, for Whack or Mirggles, related to the timeline, did Piper make it to her 34th birthday, or did the show start with her last birthday party? Marcus, you want to take this one?
Yeah. The show started with her last birthday party, yeah. Because it was only like 3 months, right? So, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how much.
3 months.
Oh, so that's interesting. Because since we're talking about wonky time passing, I thought it was left kind of up to interpretation how much time they spent in Rivendell.
Well,
I assumed it was like many months before or even years before you finally the shadow took you.
So,
yep.
Did you mention it already, Whack? What I messaged you? Yeah.
Oh, what you messaged me? What did you message me?
Oh, no. During the finale, I messaged you at one point, and I was like, "Hey, can this happen?" But it didn't end up coming up because just like obviously the natural progression. Can I say what I said?
Yeah, just
to
talk
you?
about it. I can't remember.
Yeah.
You got to understand, when we do a finale episode, brains
totally
are leaking out of every orifice.
Yeah. I messaged Whack and I said, can Piper live double the amount of time she would have because they stayed?
Oh, so, right.
Oh.
Yeah, so she would have gone faster, but because they stayed with her, the shadow took her slower than it would have. So they got extra time. So in my headcanon, that happened, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because they were in Rivendell, and Rivendell was under the protection of, one of the 3 rings, exactly. Like, time is essentially moot, like, it's an eternity in there. It's like a hyperbolic time chamber until you get eated out.
You leave,
yeah.
That's interesting to
so
think that as well.
Let's get your opinion, Mergs. How long do you think it was?
Ooh. How long do I think it was?
What feels right?
Yeah. Based on where Piper was when they got to Rivendell and how far the shadow had progressed at that point, plus she took the rest of the curse from Anduin, I would like to think that she maybe had like 6 months, actually. And that it would have been faster, but because everyone stayed with her, it went longer. So
do you think it was? Do you think it was another year? You were in Rivendell for a year?
Yeah, I think so.
So then 34.
So then, was maybe that your birthday, bro? As we're like walking you out by the tree.
I love that. I love that. So,
I'm gonna cry.
But I think she turned 33 and then she didn't have like another acknowledgement of a birthday. So she might have aged and like It might have been a year, but I don't think that she acknowledged her birthday again. It wasn't like, happy birthday, Piper. I think when she got to Rivendell and then she was like, oh, the shadow, I think she just stopped really paying attention to... She stopped tracking the time. It was just about being present with who she was with and absorbing as much as she could. And it didn't really matter. There's no seasons to track it. There's no anything like that. So I think, that feels right to me.
So then let's say that that's canon.
Yeah.
Stooge GR says, for whack, I got the feeling that the story took a sharp turn after Piper's curse. How unexpected was it for whack? And am I right in thinking that the plot was originally centered around Tharbad? So I answered this a little bit. It took a sharp turn after Piper's curse, and that's entirely up to the roleplay. Because Mirggles did that thing, I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's roll with that. And it seemed like everybody was on board with that thing. And before that, I felt like the cast was a little, they were struggling to figure out their purpose. Yep. And once that happened, it was, everybody was on board. And I was like, okay, decision made. So that's kind of just how that went down. I had all these grandiose sort of ideas for what I wanted to do with the story, and as far as I'm concerned, all of those things still happened. They just didn't happen to them. And there was a lot of stuff going on in the background that was happening, and it wasn't centered around Tharbad. Tharbad was a starting point. It was, so those visions that Piper had of the city getting destroyed, I was going to go through with all that stuff. I was going to go through with all of that stuff. Okay, it was going to happen.
It does, sort of. I mean, that town does fail. It is a dead city by the time Lord of the Rings happens.
I'll be honest, when you were asking about favorite moments is like the first question, and I rattled off a few. I forgot to mention that one, but that was actually one of my favorites, was when you did the fake out of like the dream sequence of Tharbad getting attacked.
That was
in the moment that it was happening, I was like, wow, we've built up all these little side quests and mini stories and met all these other characters, and we're building up this potential like revolution or coup or whatever you want to call it, of like the working class like throwing out these bandit turned leaders or whatever. And I was like, and Whack really just like threw all that out the window. I was like, I'm just gonna roll the town over with an army of orcs. And I was just sitting here like, bravo. Laying all that framework just to throw it out is a lot of guts.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be orcs. It was going to be the Dune Lendings. And the premise there was that Theoden was going to reinforce, but it was too late. Like, the city was already destroyed. So it was going... Again, I had it in my head when we did this campaign, this is going to be sad. This is not going to be Lord of the Rings. This is not going to be The Hobbit. This is going to be... Or, I guess Hobbit is... You could argue, I think, Hobbit... especially in the movies, is it feels a lot more sad, I think, than Lord of the Rings. But like, I think that I had always intended for this to be sad. So it was like, no matter what you did, you can't save Eriador. That was kind of the premise, and they say that in the book. It's in the book. It's like, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I want to do anyway.
I think one of my favorite things about the Lord of the Rings in the first place is the fact that it's centered so intrinsically around like such a small group. Like, Tolkien has built this world. He's built languages, places, people, and events that are happening everywhere. You have no idea that Gandalf, Thorku, you have no idea that he is also a ring bearer. You have no idea he's a freaking angel who is there on the behest of basically God. You have no idea what is going on. It's just about how these people are happening to live in that world. Like, because of that, the way I made Ryuth, the way like dwarves are already secretive, which works perfectly with how Tolkien has that world view and all that stuff. And I don't think that I would have ever brought up the dragon helm unless I was pushed into it, just because of how dwarves are, and just because it's more about the important thing is how our group and party live and focus on the task at hand as opposed to the bigger picture. And I think, I don't know where I'm getting it, other than like I think it was really well done, just basically pulling the right strings in the right order, because I don't think an end goal or an overarching story, whilst like we had one, there doesn't necessarily have to be one that is so tied with the world around them, because in the end we're like a speck of dust in like a desert, right? We're like a planet in the galaxy. Like, what we do doesn't matter, it's all about us, yeah, it was really cool.
I felt like if you think about it, right from the beginning of the original movie trilogy, it's pretty clear right from what is it, like an hour into the first movie or however far they get before you have like the Council of Elrond, where they say, all right, we have to take the ring to Mordor and throw it in. Mm-hmm. And that gives them a very clear purpose that fills out all three movies, right?
Right.
And if you watch the Hobbit trilogy, it was the same thing there. It's like the dwarves show up with a contract. It's like, hey, we need you to be our burglar. Here's what we're going to go do. We're going to break into this thing and we're going to get our castle back. And that sets like a very clear purpose for all three of those movies. Mm-hmm. I did feel like the lack of a clear purpose for our group was making some of the roleplay feel a little bit awkward to me, especially around the Tharbad section. Because I was sitting there like trying to justify in my mind. I'm like, really, why would this character that I've designed, why would I stay here in this town? Aside from Gandalf asking me to look after the hobbits, I have zero motivation to be here and zero connection to this town. But the whole curse sequence with Piper instantly solved like every problem that I had in terms of character motivation conflicting with roleplay, and it added what I felt was a very badly needed unified purpose that would give us a goal that would carry us all the way to the end of the campaign. I think it was for WAC to capitalize on that opportunity and recognize, hey, this is a good direction for the story, was the mark of a true professional who's been doing this for a while, to recognize that, hey, this is what the story needs, and roll with it, because that instantly made everything so much better.
Oh, thanks. I tried. We're talking about WAC. Never mind. Sorry.
I think
WAC did okay.
Like,
WAC did okay too.
I think also like I think that the curse direction shift was actually quite earned by the journey that we had been on at that point. Like, we kind of needed to get to know each other and build relationships with each other. So even though I feel like we definitely were a bit aimless at times in that in the Tharbad sequences and slightly after that, it was kind of, like there wasn't anyone coming to knock on the door with a Gandalf rune to be like, here's this item, here's this thing you need to go do. So we had to, well, we didn't have to, but we created that as a group ourselves. And I feel like through the ability that we had to like connect, I mean, like, Piper would never have even known to do that, in the first place, if there had not been such a buildup of like connection and stuff. But I have to be honest, like I did not know that the curse was real. And
hold on, I'm gonna highlight something for you. I just want to show you this real good. People may not be able to read. I'm just gonna flash it on screen for a second. Just following up on that here. Highlighted my notes. Is it mirrored or is it facing forwards? I just highlighted one line. Anduin believes he is cursed and it affects his mentality constantly, but whether he is actually cursed or not is up to the DM. I had that written in since day one, so the whole not knowing that the curse was real thing is kind of funny. The curse, whenever I design a character for any of these, and it's been the same on every show that Tablestory has invited me to so far, I always like write a character with a strong foundation, but I always try to give them at least one personal issue that will act as a a personal quest that needs to be resolved, and then once that's resolved, I can then focus fully on following whatever the main story was to the conclusion. And in this particular case, the curse was meant to be like my isolated small side story, and I figured it'll get resolved halfway through, and that'll be my character breaking free of his past and can now focus on whatever is the main quest. So having it turn into the actual main quest kind of threw me for a loop. I was not expecting that. And in a way, I realized now I got Piper killed. Whoops.
Yeah, so when we were talking earlier about like returning home and feeling unable to be home, I thought of Anduin going back and telling how the curse was lifted, and then just everybody celebrating him as a hero. And in his own mind, he's like, but yes, I had a part in it, but it was Piper that did this. So, just feeling weird about being back while everybody's like, oh, the hero Anduin, and just, yeah, feeling strange about being home. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Oh, go ahead.
I'm trying to decide how much I want to say here, or if I actually do want to sit down and do like an audiobook style
Please do that.
recap.
Yeah, I think you should. I think it's a wonderful project, and I think you could do a lot with it.
Yeah, I'll refrain from giving too many spoilers then. I'll simply say, this much. Anduin does go home afterwards, but he doesn't stay there.
Yeah.
Oh.
He gets home, and much like Frodo after his adventure with the ring, realizes he has seen too much. He can't stay. He's not the same person anymore. So I'll leave it at that. And Anduin does go home to report all of what he's seen, but he does not stay with his tribe.
I did want to say, and this sort of combines a lot of what was just said here, but sort of like with a painting, if you're too close to it, you can't really see what it is, but as you step back, you get this really good feel for what that painting is. This story, even with us starting, Gandalf showing up and the hobbits being like, yeah, let's do this thing, and the running into the Wolfman, and then Rioth eventually, all these little steps that happened that got us to the Dunlandings, that got us back to Tharbad, that got us to Bree, that got, all these little steps and all these little things. There's a lot of interaction with the world, and they like Wack was saying, we couldn't save it, but we left our mark on it, even though it wasn't anyone that someone could turn around and point at. Every time we decided to help, it was just to help. But I like the idea that there's these repercussions after the fact. I also like the idea that Gandalf was very aware of how things are, almost in a pseudo soothsayer, reading the future sort of way. That's just sort of who his character always is. So he knew that the hobbits needed to go along. He knew that, getting up with Strider and having that. I'm like, how much did the hobbits Can I? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to interject
Please.
based on what you're saying, because I wanted to add to it. So
Yeah.
I tried really hard, and I don't know if this came across at all. But my goals with Strider and with Gandalf were that they were the most affected by this. And
That's what I was gonna say.
That
Go
was
ahead.
that was the. I'm sorry, I didn't realize
this
that's
is
where
wonderful.
you're
No,
going.
I love that you said that. No, go ahead, please.
My hope was that I was trying to. That was whenever I was playing Strider, I was trying to show his growth, and that was really important to me because I've always tried to, especially when doing the research for the show before we got started, I imagine like he's growing up over this time. He left home and he has to like go on adventures to grow up and become the person that he wants to be, and the struggle internally that he was not good enough for anybody or any of the people that said he was good enough. He didn't feel good enough. He didn't feel like he was worthy of their praise or like or the destiny that was thrown upon him. So when I was doing all this stuff, I wanted to show growth from Strider, and I wanted you to see like his inexperience, and that these events will change him and help him become the person that he is destined to become. And Gandalf as well. I wanted there to be this period of this sort of growth for Gandalf. Now, I didn't get to bring Gandalf in for as much as I wanted at the end, but
so if I could
your
jump
story
onto that,
is more important.
No, if I could jump onto that actually. So that is where I absolutely that is what I picked up on to answer your question. That is what I saw as it being this learning experience for them. And as for Gandalf, I saw Gandalf seeing the hobbits as, I mean, he knew Bilbo was strong, but he saw Piper hold on to this curse for somebody. Can you imagine when he looks at Frodo and he goes, yeah, you can carry the ring? There was like no hesitation for Gandalf. There was none. He goes, you have to do it, and you're the only one that can, essentially. And similarly with Strider, I love the idea that this dwarf and this man and these three hobbits, and he saw how ferociously they fought for people they did not know. What a wonderful, like, heart-feeling thing when you do have this sort of destiny thrown on top of you to turn around and say, well, it's not just me. Look at, they're here. Here are these others that are trying, and they don't necessarily have that destiny, but they're still trying. It's lovely. But I will digress.
The warm fuzzies are intense.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing that Gandalf didn't show up, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Till the end, I agree.
Yeah, because Riel's only motive to stay with the party in Tharbad was Gandalf said, keep the hobbits safe until I return. And
Same. You too.
that was his only motive. Had Gandalf had shown up, then Riel would have asked Gandalf to make good his end of the bargain and left.
Yep.
So yeah, I kind of assumed that was why Gandalf hadn't shown up. But yeah.
And ironically, asking Gandalf can you break this curse off me was Anduin's true motive for joining the whole time. I didn't have him ask at their first meeting because he wouldn't want to intrude. And then when Gandalf was saying, oh, we're going down to Tharbad, in my mind, I thought, oh, okay, I'll act as their guide and incur some goodwill. And once I have done them a favor and I get to know them a little bit, then maybe I can ask this powerful wizard to free me. That was Anduin's thought process the whole time. But then Gandalf is suddenly like, I have to leave, and Anduin's like, but wait a minute.
Well,
okay,
if you think about
you're coming back, right?
If you think about it, he did break it. He did break the curse by bringing Piper.
So
very true.
That's the thing that I always interpreted from Lord of the Rings was Gandalf never really did things directly. It was always assisting other people to
Their
do those
destiny.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like exactly like you said, Mirgs, like he brought the hobbits along to help. And that's how he did it. He doesn't
I do have a question.
He doesn't just solve the problem. He gets people to realize their potential and realize that they can solve the problem, or that these other friends can solve the problem.
I can't remember the exact phrasing. I want to say it was either from the Silmarillion or it was from the other book. I can't remember the name of it offhand. The Lexicon of Legends or whatever it's called. I forget. I'm sure somebody knows the name of the book I'm trying to think of.
Legendarium?
Yeah, Legendarium. Thank you. That's the one. Like some of Tolkien's other works, in one of those, it says that the Maiar, like Gandalf, were sent to be shepherds, not champions, which is why I think it shows that Gandalf's nature is to nurture humans and hobbits to stand up for themselves and accomplish great things, rather than do it himself. He's not there to be the champion himself. He's there to shepherd us, the mortals, in the right direction. And I think that came through very well during this campaign.
So, Whack. Mm-hmm. One thing about Gandalf in the books is that he would guide people to do things, But then so many times they just completely, absolutely get themselves, without a shadow of a doubt, just completely effed. You know, like, Bilbo and the dwarves and the trolls requiring Gandalf to come and show up, at the last second to break the rock to kill the trolls. Like them going and getting stuck with wolves and Gandalf having to cast fire and, by Gandalf's connections, dialing eagle.
I see it differently. I think Gandalf just kind of helps. I never saw it as solving the problem because the dwarves and Bilbo versus the trolls, for example, they're the ones that lasted that long. Gandalf didn't do anything, really. He just broke some rocks.
Right. But because he broke the rocks, they survived. He never necessarily played any of the pieces, just the final move. But the question was, did you have any Deus Ex Machinas via Gandalf planned?
Yeah, I definitely did.
Okay.
So there were supposed to be repeated Deus Ex Machina events. They were supposed to happen much more often. So Arc 1 was supposed to be Tharbad.
Okay.
Arc 1 was supposed to be Tharbad. Arc 2 is... So Arc 1 was supposed to be Tharbad, and then to answer Stooge GR's next question, what happened to the city and the resistance in the end? Tharbad falls.
Wow.
It was supposed to be it just gets overwhelmed. They were over reliant in the wall that was there. They were infighting. They were not prepared to defend the city. They were not prepared. They don't have a king. They have a bandit captain that is ruling over the city.
Yeah.
Is it better than nothing? Probably, but it's not enough
to save them.
Yeah, it's not enough to stop a siege. Versus essentially guerrilla tactics from the Dunelandings. It fell. I was going to do the Theoden and Gandalf scene coming in, but they were going to be too late. That was going to be the thing. They were basically going to come in and sort of clean up, but the city had already fallen.
Imagine Gandalf being just ever so slightly too late to any of the major finales in the movies.
But over and over again?
Well, so there was a lot of...
He arrives precisely when he means to.
So,
I mean, if he was even 30 minutes later at Helm's Deep, that would have been a real problem, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. The whole point was that there's an overarching story that's going on, and there was a lot of things that I kind of hinted at and did a little bit of foreshadowing about. You were supposed to meet more of the Dunelanding leaders, and in turn, that was going to lead you to some other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to do this thing at Tharbad where they march out Timber, and then the Dunelandings free Timber, as he's about to be executed. Was the Dunelandings were going to come in and basically stop the execution, free Timber, and get away.
Wow.
And then we have to go fight him again.
Yeah, you basically running. It would have been the thing leading. It would have been the thing leading to Arc 2.
Okay.
Because if we have to fight him again, I'm sorry, Toddles, I'm killing him this time.
Yeah, that's fair.
No healing roll this time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I won't talk about one of the things, before I look at the rest of these questions, I won't talk about the plan for the overarching thing that I was going to do. Because I mentioned dragons and stuff, but I'm not going to go into details about it because I feel like push that to the side. We made our own story. So
yeah. So essentially, the question that I like to ask is, Whack can I ask you a question, and he inevitably goes, no. So that's what that was. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Whack was just saying, on season 2 of Ashes, he wants to keep it a secret.
Wings of
Oh man.
Oh no.
This question is for
Every episode
Mirggles.
is an eagle escape. Yeah.
I do not know if this is also from Stooge GR, but it doesn't say who this is from. Do you regret taking the curse at all?
No, not even a little. That was like, yeah, I will admit that I was kind of going for more like an Oprah style release of the curse.
We're
kind of
family.
like,
Virtue signaling.
like,
Everybody
yeah,
gets a curse.
I was really going for like a
it'll
I
be
love you
fine.
and we can release this pain together kind of vibe.
Oh, I thought you meant a curse for everyone in the party for a second.
Oh,
You get a curse.
no.
You get a curse.
You get a curse.
No. I meant like, sit down and you know how Drew Barrymore, I keep seeing Drew Barrymore TikToks of her thing. Drew Barrymore like sits with people, like holds their hand. She like gets like 2 centimeters from their face, So I was kind of going for like a real metaphorical release of the curse. And that's what Piper also was going for. But here's the thing. Piper inherited, I don't think I'm that good of a role player. Piper just inherited my like complete reckless stupidity. And I just like, barrel headed through that, thinking like, yeah, this is going to be so good. I'm going to release this man from his insecurities.
I can fix him.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah,
And you did. Well, hold on. You did.
Thank you.
You fixed him real good.
The accent was terrible, and Mirggles just made decisions for Piper.
Oh,
in
no.
that
You are
moment.
not
No, I
allowed
know,
to
I know,
pick on
I know,
yourself.
I know, I know,
You're
I know.
right.
I know.
Okay.
It was just.
Well, it was also
Anyway,
pretty.
yes.
It was pretty interesting from my perspective too, because I didn't know if the curse was real. I wrote a character and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna have him afflicted by this curse, but it might just be a folk tale that's in his head that that he is allowing to affect his mentality and his persona, but I'll leave the option open that it may also be an actual supernatural force in case the DM wants to play with it.
Yeah.
I did not expect the extent to which he decided to play with it.
Yeah, it was so awesome that you Wack. It was so cool that you just the moment you were like, and you see this ghostly visage, I was like, oh no. What have I done? And then when she was like, when he's asked like, who are you? And I gotta be honest, I embodied Piper, and by embodied Piper, I mean I just reckless abandon was like, I'm his family, and I secured that. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. It was perfect. I think it was perfect. I think it was a perfect story for Piper. Obviously, I'm sad, that like she came to the end that she did. But also, as like a fan of Lord of the Rings and also just a fan of the show and everything, it really felt like an honor to be able to have play a character and have that character go through that kind of arc and go through that kind of story. I felt like really spoiled, like genuinely. I was like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. And even at the end, when like I can't believe this is the best day of my life. My character's dying. But even Wack, Wack and I didn't. Wack didn't message me being like, "Are you okay if this happens?"
Yeah.
During the episode or anything. I just knew it was just like a perfect example of like we're on the same page about what this character needs, and I can't imagine a better, more inspiring end for her. Like she ended a curse from like an entire line of Beornings, and it was amazing. I wouldn't change a single thing.
Thank you, Mirggles. For Meyer,
gave Piper what she needed. She needed to die. What?
this question, also from Stooge GR. Rioth is the most silent and mysterious character. Is there anything that hasn't been revealed about him?
Oh, tons, probably.
So much.
His beard size.
Oh, hello.
That's the question. That's the answer.
That was the answer?
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was a perfect answer. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of him, yeah.
I just wanted him to do it again. He got
He's
really
a
close to the
dwarf.
camera. It was nice.
All right, Meyer doesn't feel like expounding on that.
He has a glass eye. He's saying eye because he's got a glass eye. You don't know that because it's a secret.
It was a yes or no question. They said, is there anything that hasn't been revealed? Yes.
Yeah. He's literally a dwarf.
Eye or
I mean, they don't
nie?
even speak their own language, you know, like apart from Barukazad, because they can't be helped. Like they don't speak their own language. They don't say anything that's about what they're about, you know, apart from maybe like Gimli, like giving the names, like the dwarven names of like specific mountains and stuff. Like, no. So like I wouldn't say it out of character either. I was kind of deliberating whether or not to give you his age even, but I mentioned the Battle of Azanul Bazaar and Dane before, so I figured why not. But yeah, I mean, you'll find out when you find out.
The music.
Yep.
So intense.
Very intense.
Fuck, man.
I'm in like full fight or flight for
These
this
secrets
information
are.
now.
If there was a season 2, it would be this song. Like it's like the opening
Yes.
scene is fucking Ruth like running down a tunnel like, oh, is something up?
Yeah. Fucking arrows going past
Oh
him,
shit! Yeah, like oh.
bouncing off a shield on his back.
Carrying a
This
dragon
is-
helm overhead
You
with a
might-
yeah,
boulder
like,
rolling
oh,
behind him.
I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Freeze frame. Can we? The record scratch.
Oh god.
I haven't told the
was in this
cast
moment
yet,
he
but
realized.
season 2. No. Oh, fuck.
Costume.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm ready. Hold on.
Okay. For all of the cast, did you have any thoughts on who you would choose as the next character if the main one did not survive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who was the
Aaron
main
and I talked
character?
about this. No, the character that you were playing. Like
your
if your character died during
Oh,
the
okay.
game, what was the next character that you would have rolled up?
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to make a barding of Dale, like Eastern trader character. I didn't put an extensive amount of thought into it because I was like, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I'm not going to write up a whole backstory, but I was going to make like a kind of an archer heavy character human based on the character of Bard.
Bard, yeah.
Bard the Bowman from the movies, but also because that's like a primary character archetype in the book is like followers of this guy. So I was going to do one of those.
I absolutely was gonna be an elf, just
Same.
to argue with Meyer.
Yeah.
Yep.
With Meyer.
I will.
Well,
Yeah.
with
If
Rio.
you're still, if
Not
you're still
Rio.
there
I
as
want to
Rio.
play with you.
You.
I want to go back and forth with you. I know that you would let me do that. So
I would say I did want to go sword heavy elf. I did want to go a bow.
yeah, we
I
talked about
wanted,
this. I was gonna
yeah.
do bow because I really enjoyed the bow playthrough, and then I didn't have to relearn anything, and then he was gonna be.
Yeah, and
That
it
sword.
would have been. We were all ready for those moments, you know. I thought I was dead at one point. I thought Lawton was dead. I you know, when he got stabbed by Timber.
If Riot had died and had died first, then he would have been an elf. He would have been a very like vapid, airheaded elf. Not like
No,
like,
stop.
oh my god! But he would have been like.
Oh my god! Is that a ring? Oh wow!
Oh my god. Welcome to
Fuck off with
You might be asking
Oh my
how I got
goodness.
here.
I can't even begin to fathom the Valley Girl elf trope played by
It's the
Meyer.
start of it's the start of Clueless, but as it's Meyer's elf.
Get out of my forest,
Essentially-
okay? No one invited you.
I was
Oh
gonna
my
make an
God.
absent-minded elf because
As
they live so
elf.
long.
As
Like
elf.
things that happen in present day
elf.
don't mean anything. As elf.
Ah, okay.
But if one of you guys died first and you were the elves, then I would have made a hobbit instead. I would have made a sheriff, you know, like or like what was Aragorn initially before he got rewritten into a human. I would have made a hobbit ranger.
Oh, cool.
That would have
That's
been
so
great,
cool.
actually.
Yeah, that would have been very cool.
We talked about this before the show got started. We were a little bit like, this is something I brought up. I was like, if any of your characters die, you're going to be off for a few weeks.
Yep.
We didn't want... it was basically going to be until you get to a safe haven, until you like went back to Tharbad, or you got to Rivendell, or went back to Bree or something. You were off for that time. Because we wanted it
That's
to have
why
like
I was
an
late
impact.
to the show today, actually. Was to ensure that.
We're waiting until we get to a safe haven.
Sorry.
But yeah, that was one of the things we talked about. Lonaku, all cast. What do you think about the One Ring 2nd edition as a TTRPG system in general, and or in specific playing a Lord of the Rings campaign? What are the strengths and weaknesses?
Healing, motherfuckers. But also, maybe that adds to the tension. I don't know.
I think
I gotta be honest. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, no. Go ahead, please.
Okay, listen. I am not. I do not touch anywhere near Fairlight's. Everyone here who actually understands systems. I'm kind of like bouncing my way through most of the time. So my words are a bit biased, but I actually came to really enjoy the system. I know that we had our issues with it early on in terms of like how the mechanics worked, but I feel like, and I think really this is about whack and not the system. It's the amount of the amount of work that whack did to like allow for the system to really function for us. A lot of homebrew and a lot of like reshifting things around and allowing rules to like make more sense for us. So I came to really enjoy Whack's version of the One Ring, but I think it's like honestly, in terms of
pretty orthodox. He filled in spaces that weren't really filled in the book, but Whack, not to speak for him, but generally he tries to play a system as close to the rules as possible.
I felt like the combat was very thrilling. I really cared about what was going to happen. I do think the healing was a bit like, oh man, how does anyone like get over anything that happens to them on a journey? But also, how does anyone get over anything that happens to them on a journey?
Yep.
So
my understanding of the system is that we did not at all play the way it was intended. I know you said Whack tries to stick close to the system as it's written, but no, he didn't.
Not this time.
He took liberties, and it's a good thing that he did, because the way that this system is written, I don't think actually meshes well with the style of presentation that Tablestory often does, both from the campaigns that I've been in with you guys, and also from just being a spectator watching some of the other fantastic shows that are available here. You like that? Shout out to Tablestory. But the
50 cents headed your way.
Hashtag ad.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hashtag ad. Get that ad revenue.
It's our budget.
The whole sponsorship budget. No, but the style of role play that all of you do here, and that Whack and PB and Brad have on their shows, like the really deep character development and story arcs, doesn't mesh well with the way that the One Ring book is written, because the One Ring 2nd edition book features or it expects rather multiple time skips. It expects that we are covering a much longer period of time, and that we're not sitting there like dragging out scenes for hours, or like 40-50 minutes. Like we had so many times where the hobbits would just go back and forth and talk for like 30 plus minutes, and it's amazing content, and it's great role play, and it's fun for the viewers. It's not accounted for in this book, though. This book is like, oh yeah, you do your action scene, and then okay, your action scene is resolved, now you're in the next town. It's like, no, hold on. Our action scene is over, but it's going to take us like 7 sessions to get to the next town, because we drag out every inch of the journey, and we cover every step, and our characters talk so much, and it's very roleplay heavy. I felt like the system was designed for more... To me, it felt like it was designed for a more number crunchy group who wants to get in there and stab some orcs and then jump ahead to the next major sequence without being bogged down by so much roleplay. So if anything, I feel like our playthrough was not really the way the system was meant to be played. Even if we did end up telling a fantastic story using the system as a medium, I feel like you watch any other group play this system, it's going to be very, very different because of how we approached it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is actually Jesse and I had a lot of conversations early on because I think typically what I like to do whenever I'm looking at a new system is I really try to wrap my head around it pretty early on. It's one of the first things I look for in a book is like, okay, how do I play this? Because I want to focus on the immersion for Tablestory. That's what we do. And I'm like, when I'm evaluating systems for things, I need to have that in mind. So it's like, I want to be told exactly what is happening. When I look at a book for any rules, for any rule system, PB knows exactly.
I know, dude. Yeah. I fucking send him a book, and his response after I'm like, oh man, this is so cool. You should totally check it out. I think you'd really like it for a show. He's like, the rules aren't on the first 3 pages. I'm out.
I get so livid when it's like, I just want to figure out
zero denial.
I've said it before. When I'm like, okay, what dice do I need? Yep. How do we do stuff? What are the classes?
How do you make a character?
Yeah. I want to look at all that stuff. I want to see what is the normal role. What am I doing? How do I do that?
What was the most recent one I sent you that was like lore heavy until... Was it Blade Runner?
I've read so many of them. It's so hard to keep track.
Like, God, I don't want the character stuff in the middle of the book.
I love lore. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I just like clear delineations. I just like it to say. So here's a good example. D&D 5e, right? They're just like, okay, here's all the character stuff is here. And then this is all the information about like the pantheons and blah, blah, blah. And like all this stuff is here. I know where that is. I can just flip to it. I can go there. This is a reference book. I'm not reading a novel. It's a very big difference. I'm not trying to read a story here unless I'm like, okay, let's dive into the lore and let's figure out what's going on. I just want to know how to play the game because I need to evaluate stuff very quickly, typically for shows.
Yeah, I think they do that to try to like, draw you in to, kind of like what the mood. And I get it. But also I just wish that all the mechanic stuff that your players need to know would be right up front. Then you have lore in the middle and then all the secret GM stuff in the back.
I want exactly that. I would like every book to just have the quick rules on like one page. Okay. Yeah. And of course, you can't get into all the specifics, but like, here's a normal dice roll. Here's what happens when you role play. This is, I just want that in every single book that I read. And then go as ham as you want on the lore. I love that stuff myself. I read it all. But like, I don't want it to be hidden. Okay?
Yeah.
I have a major problem with that.
To add on to what Fairlight said, I concur with everything that he did say. And the One Ring system is really cool. Like the stats and everything else is super intricate. The amount of points you can put into things really does make it matter for your character and for the group and everything else. But however, at the same time, like as Fairlight said, the way it's designed, it's for a more number crunchy group. It's Lord of the Rings, and so the guys who have made the system understand that and understand the importance of lore and fellowship and everything else. However, they took it and they made that also a number crunchy system, which we never necessarily touched because we do that organically anyway, and it kind of made it very, it was just different. It wasn't necessary for us in the first place, but it did make things and the way progression works in general kind of interesting. I would say that when it comes down to combat, though, combat for me, as Ryuth did feel, and it's my only one hang-up, is that combat felt for my character in particular very binary. I was either attacking or I was attacking with Baruch Hazad. There wasn't really room for anything else. I could have maybe perhaps done something to incur a disadvantage, but it made
That's
more
actually a
sense to
really good
attack.
point, because that ended up being Toddles as well. I learned very early on that like I wanted to enhearten people a lot, but unless we were fighting, and I think Fairlight even brought it up, we talked about it after one session, unless there was a horde that we were fighting, it was better for me to actually fire my bow. It just made more sense. And it definitely was one of those systems where, you know, if it wasn't whack GMing and it was maybe a more orthodox approach to the game, then we would have been very punished by some of the cool choices we were trying to do. But whack allowed us to do rule of cool a lot, but traditionally it would have gotten all of us killed.
It's a system that like does try again to, you know, just make it tries to take the roleplay element and make that into a numbers thing that is supposed to be like, you know, as equal as combat. But combat itself, you know, as you from the early maps, there was no movement and everything else. And, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, whack adapted, you know, like we got to move, we got to do this and that, the other to actually make it more involved. And I think even the makers of the system kind of ported, you know, like a 5e to make it more, I guess, to make it more familiar. But I don't think it's necessarily, it's not a bad system, but it's different.
So the way I like to look at it is the way that we play role-playing games, we are a small percentage. We're like the 1%, right? We don't play it like most groups at home do. There's a reason that like modules and things are so popular. It's because people generally want to have all the role play laid out for them. They're not necessarily as creatively inclined as a lot of the things that we do are. They like to just have it like, this person says this thing and this person says this thing. And, you know, they'll try and play it in character, but they're going to remove some of those bits that they might find more difficult for them. They look at it maybe as more of a board game, you know, where it's like, okay, let's roll some dice. Oh, yay! Like I rolled high, you know, like I do some damage. Cool. Let's mark that down. I think that's the way a majority of people play. So, and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
No.
I think Meyer hit the nail on the head when he said that it turns the role play into number crunch in some cases, because I immediately think of the shadow system, which if you are already role-playing your character as having strengths and weaknesses, and you are also role-playing your character as being prone to temptation, to depression, to darkness, to mental fatigue, you wouldn't need a shadow system because you're already role-playing all that. But this system takes that form of role-play and puts it mechanically on your character as a number. And also the council system, which I don't think we ever actually used it at any point in the whole campaign. But for those of you that haven't read the book, there's actually a mechanic to replicate the Council of Elrond scene from the movies, where you have like your important leader figure, and then you have your party comes in to basically beg a favor from said leader, or you could also compare it to any of the powerful characters that the party members met throughout both the original trilogy and in the Hobbit movies. Like multiple times they would find themselves coming into like the audience chamber of whoever their host is and having to explain their plight and ask for help. And there's a mechanic for that in the book where you have to roll your courtesy to see how good a first impression you make, and then roll for the temperament of your host, and roll for basically you roll for a whole bunch of personality things and conversation things that we just kind of skip over that because we are actively just role playing it out. Like we are having the whole conversation in character, talking it out, whereas this the book is kind of like laid out as if you were just going to do the whole thing like a dice roll. Like I walk in, check my courtesy, I rolled a 9. Oh, okay, that's a great courtesy roll. He's impressed. Now you got to roll to persuade him to help you. Okay, I roll for persuasion. Whereas we just kind of...
Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's technically what Enhearten was for. And I remember being like looking through the book and feeling like I wanted to play a Samwise type character that, encouraged everybody and was like the hope battery, but also through action or just through that like undying loyalty to, whatever they decide to commit themselves to, and then, which is family. But the way that the book laid out persuasion and in Hearten was that persuasion was with words and in Hearten was with action, but also they added in Hearten is in that arbiter way where you're speaking to a council. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give speeches. Like, I don't want to do Aragorn style. Like, I don't want to do that. And so I had to ask Whack. I was like, okay, like, I want to put all of my points into something because I feel like that's the way to run this, play in this system. But I don't want to dump everything in Hearten if I can't use it in the way that's like, I want to inspire you through my actions and through my undying loyalty. I don't want to have to persuade you with words. And luckily he let me do that. But typically that's what in Hearten was for. But yet they'd have in Hearten roles in battle that are, through your action. It was weird. It was very strangely laid out.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad we did.
I do think that the way the system is written, it favors letting the dice role play for you, which is not really how I like to play. But it's definitely, I think it's really good for someone who's newer to TTRPGs who may not find it as easy to write backstories or stay in character, or if you say things like I'm not a very good actor, or I struggle, I don't like doing funny voices or whatever, well then this is perfect then, because it kind of accommodates for all of that. You just roll the dice and see what happens, and it kind of takes that pressure off of the player. Although I will also criticize the combat for the same thing that Meyer said about it being binary. He's either attacking with Baruch Kazad or just attacking. I now imagine you're playing the same character. You don't even have Baruch Kazad. I'm just attacking every turn. It's all I ever do. It's the only viable option for the character build. So it would have been nice to see more variety of combat actions. I know that you had things like battle roll to obtain advantages or defend a comrade or whatever, but numerically speaking, in basically every situation we found ourselves in, there was never any moment where it made sense for me to do anything other than stab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that was my biggest complaint, honestly. It was council stuff and the battle stuff. That was here's what I really liked. I liked the journey mechanics. I thought that was great. I thought the concept of assigning people roles and sort of saying you are responsible for this, and then we do a few different roles to say like, oh, okay, this bad thing happens. How bad is it? And who is the person that is the sort of focus for the bad thing? I think it's a great concept. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really cool travel experience. And
I just got to point it out, though, that the way it's written in the book, that whole travel sequence you just talked about is supposed to be like 10 minutes. We stretched it out to like 5 episodes of travel. Just, again, highlighting how different the way the system is written compared to how we actually played it out.
It's really good for roleplay. That's probably why I like it so much.
Yeah.
Well, you had something like that in Rhyme, because we were in this cold, harsh environment. You were rolling for weather and all sorts of different things. It definitely makes it more interesting.
Because travel's tough. Travel's tough to make interesting.
Yeah.
Random trivia. The character concept for Anduin, I originally came up with from watching the two of you and whoever else was in the group from Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Really?
I was watching most of the Rime playthrough, and at one point while I was watching, I thought, if I played like a frigid survival wilderness campaign, what kind of character would I make? And I sketched up a Goliath ranger who hunted in a pack with his tribe, hunted like mammoths and whatnot, because I remember the mammoth chasing the carriage sequence.
Oh God.
And I was like, what if I had this whole clan of Goliaths that come out in numbers with javelins and try to bring down mammoths for food and wool? That was the original idea that I had for Anduin. So then when Whack or it was Brad originally approached me, I was like, hey, you want to do Lord of the Rings stuff? And I was like, sure. And I saw it was Whack, and I was like, I have an idea for a character I might bring to this campaign. But yeah, it was actually came from watching you guys play Rime.
Okay, speaking of that, I mean, I'd like to ask a question. It's kind of off the back of that. So why did each cast member choose the characters they chose to play? Like, what was your thought process in choosing who they were, race, name, like all backstory, all that? What was your process going into it?
I can go first.
Sure.
So originally, as GM on Tablestory, we talk about who we're thinking about casting in shows and stuff like that. And I wasn't on the roster for this show in the beginning at all. I think when Whack was conceptualizing it, it was like I was in multiple things, right? And there just came a moment where I was like, this is her favorite setting in the whole world. She's my best friend in the whole world. I have to go play a hobbit with her. And I actually broke a rule and I asked Whack to be in the show, which I would never do. If the GM doesn't approach me, I'm not going to say anything because, there's only so many shows. I'm so lucky to be on so many Tablestory things anyway. But I was basically like, I would please let me be a hobbit with Mirggles, and then and Aaron was in it as well, and I was like, I would love nothing more than to be a hobbit with those two, and Wax said yes to that. Actually, he was like, "Are you sure? Because that's a lot for you to do." And I was like, "I will die to do this." And so I already knew going in that I was going to be a hobbit with those two because they were, Mergs was like, if I was ever in a Lord of the Rings game, I would have to be a hobbit. So yeah. And I kind of knew that, we talked about doing different accents and things like that. And then because it was Aaron, I was like, I think it would be fun to play that dynamic that we have on Wild RP with Sparks and Michael, that family dynamic, and do those Irish accents. So I kind of based it off of that. So I knew going way in that we were going to do the hobbits and be a family. So that's my answer for that.
Yeah. I will jump off of that. Two of some of the best days of my entire life, Whack inviting me to this show, and then PB telling me that she was going to be on it.
Yeah. Do we have the video? Are we allowed to watch that? Do you have that somewhere? The video of her reacting to her invitation?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so
I have to find it.
It would be in our chat. It would be...
Yeah, but I have it on my computer someplace. I have to find it.
Yeah, so should I say what it... I'll wait until you find it, and then we can... Okay, so Whack... Okay, dude. I can't. I'll cry again. Whack, sent me a letter to invite me to be in the show, and I think Peeves told me to open it and record it.
Yeah.
So I got my camera going and everything, and I opened it, and I weapons grade emotions. I lost my mind. I was so...
Danky messaged me and was like, what the fuck did you do to my wife? Can you give me a heads up first before you do something like this?
To be fair, he's used to it now.
I found it.
Oh, what? You found it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh no! This is just no. That wasn't the invite.
That's not it.
Oh, that's just me crying
This isn't
to
the
a
invite.
watcher of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
That's just me watching Lord of the Rings and crying.
Oh, that's just you crying in general. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
To be fair, all we have to do is put on Concerning Hobbits and we'll get some Mirggles tears.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit inoculated, actually. But who knows? You never know. Anyway, so he invited me, and I cried and lost my mind. And then PB told me that she was going to do it, and I cried and lost my mind. And then I was like, obviously I have to be a hobbit. And I sort of knew, I was thinking of Piper, and I knew that it was going to be an adventure. And hobbits do not typically like adventure. And we were playing 3 hobbits. And there had to be a reason for why we would go on an adventure, and so I was like, I think maybe I'll do a took. I think I'll do a wanderlusting took, who just loves the elves. I just wanted to play me. just wanted to see the elves, dude. And yeah, so that's kind of like where Piper came. But we made our characters together, basically, if I remember correctly. Like, we worked on them in tandem very closely, which was really nice because obviously we were going to be playing like a family, so they knew each other very deeply. Yeah, and that it was just a wonderful. It was a no-brainer to play a hobbit in this opportunity to be in Lord of the Rings and be in this world in Middle Earth. To be a hobbit is a dream. I think you start out wanting to be an elf when you're like a kid. You like watch it, and you're like, Legolas is so cool and hot, so I think I would want to be an elf. Arwen's so cool and hot. An elf is so cool. And then you turn 30 and you're like, I would like a nap. Can I be a hobbit with a garden? Thank you.
Actually, if I could jump off of that, since we're just do all the hobbits at once. Yeah, it was always going to be a Hobbit. There was no question. I mean, I looked at the book at all the other, options, but the Hobbit just seems like so much fun. I will say, we did sit down. We did all, talk about how we knew each other and a lot of little tidbits. But one of the main character, I guess, defining things that I gave Lawton actually comes from the movie. In the beginning, when Gandalf first shows up, you see a hobbit. He's a large older man, and it's when the kids run after, saying, Gandalf, Gandalf, and then he shoots off the fireworks, right? Okay, so he's a Proudfoot because later on, you see him at the party, and then, Bilbo goes through all the names, and he says Proudfoot, and he yells Proud Feet. So I saw this character as someone that was understood tradition and understood what it meant to be a hobbit, but wasn't really afraid to have fun. And I love that. I love the idea. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I probably dragged way more out of that character than was shown, but I wanted to do that. So that's where Lawton Proudfoot came from. If things had gone differently, when Lawton got back, that's who he would have been, was that man. But things went differently, so he's just a family member.
Okay, Mirgs, I got the video. Is it okay if I show it?
Yeah,
you can say no. It's okay.
No, 100%. As long as I'm clothed. I don't remember what happens in the video. But
I would let you know if you weren't clothed.
I know.
Now we know what folder it was saved in.
That's why I couldn't find it. It was in the...
I have so many questions. I'm going to be in Lord of the Rings.
Listen, when the feeling takes
when
you.
she gets too warm, she's like, I'm going to pass out.
Okay. This was amazing. Where did I say this? Okay, let's make sure I do this correctly.
I don't think there's any actual recording of the video itself. It's just the recording of me reacting to the video, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So we'll just pretend that video is happening, guys.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Do you have the original invite? Actually, Whack?
I do.
Okay. We can watch that after, I guess.
Yeah.
Or first? No, sorry. You're already queuing up. You're queuing it up. Don't worry.
No, we'll do it. We'll do it first. Hold on. So,
learning everything.
Originally, the way that this worked, just so you are aware of my thought process, was that PB originally, when the One Ring came out, PB was like, I would love to run this.
Yep.
I just don't know when the fuck I can do it. One of the things that's so difficult on Tablestory is to time out shows and we'd love to do a thing where we're we have seasons like television and we can be like, it starts at this time and it ends at this time. It can never happen. We never know how long anything's going to be specifically. It's so hard to do. And we have to time it around all these other things. So when she did that, I ended the show and I was just like, what feels good to run right now? Rings of Power was out. Meyer was doing a watch along with Rings of Power.
Yeah.
And when you run shows on Tablestory, you start to be able to do cast math. Okay? Yeah. And it's like you start with maybe one person, you're like, who would be good for this? Well, obviously Mirggles is a giant Lord of the Rings fan. Obviously Aaron is a giant Lord of the Rings fan. So when I started the show, those were the first two people I had cast. It was like, okay, giant Lord of the Rings fans, they have to be the backbone of the show. And then Meyer, like right after I had the thought, Meyer,
I just saw those DMs.
Yeah.
Where you were like, Meyer's doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know he was a fan of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Meyer was like, I saw the Twitter post, like he was doing a Rings of Power watch along thing or whatever. He had a sponsored thing. So I was like, holy shit. They were there, and I was like, now I need somebody that is going to be the good memory person, the backup GM, the
good memory person.
And I'm like, and I also want somebody that's going to be able to push everybody else. That's really important. When you're making a cast, you need to have this like the leader almost is like, how do we decide on where to go next? We need somebody to be like, all right, everybody shut up, we're going here. That's the only way it works. You can have
it's yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be talking about cheese for 3 whole days.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to follow, never good to lead.
So that's when I thought of Fairlight, and I was like, I haven't had him on a show yet. I want to have him on a show. And then PB was like, Whack, this is going to be one of your defining shows. I want to be on this show.
I felt so bad. Listen, I
felt badly. I was like,
I
gotta say yes.
I had about a week and a half deliberating if I was going to ask you to be on your show.
Checking your DMs constantly. Like,
and then I saw that cast rolling out, and I was like, yeah, fuck this. I got to ask.
But yeah, that was...
I'm not shot, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the reasoning behind it was, but I do remember it was Brad reached out to me first about the show.
He knew you a lot better than I did.
Yeah, right, because he knew you better, so you had him ask me. It makes sense. I don't fault you for that. It was funny, though.
What are you going to fault me for then?
I wasn't going to fault you for anything. I'm just saying, no, it makes sense. If I were going to reach out to somebody, but then I was like, well, actually, hold on, you know him way better. You ask. But it was funny because at first, I thought Brad was running the show. Because he like in his first DM to me, he's like, "Hey, you want to do some Lord of the Rings roleplay stuff?"
Of course he did.
The way he phrased it, he didn't come out and say, "Hey, Wax Steven is running a Lord of the Rings show." He's just like, "Hey, do you want to be in a Lord of the Rings show?"
Because he knew you would have just been like, "No."
and so I see that, and I was like, yeah, sure, I like Lord of the Rings, I guess, which also was pretty funny compared to contrasted to Mirggles and Aaron's enthusiasm. I was like, I guess I could do Lord of the Rings. I love the Lord of the Rings movies.
I had a paper bag on.
Yeah, you're about to see me have a meltdown.
I'm watching these two have a meltdown, but to me it was just like, yeah, I guess I could do some Lord of the Rings. I like the movies. Doing the show has definitely given me a new appreciation for Lord of the Rings that I didn't have before. But I definitely was nowhere near the level of hype as half of the rest of the cast. But then, when Brad messaged me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to do it?" And I was like, "All right, yeah, sure. When are you going to do it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's not me." And I was like, and this is after I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And he's like, "All right, yeah, let me give you Wax info. He's running it." And then I'm like, "Hold on, it's not even you're running it." So he baited me into it. Didn't tell me exactly what was going on. And then the last thing that he said stuck out to me, and I still remember it now because he knew already what kind of character I was going to play without needing to be told or asking. He said, "All right, have fun. Lead the people to Gondor." And when he said that, I was like, you're putting me in this group to be the Aragorn stand-in, aren't you? And then as soon as I got into the group, PV said the same thing. She's like, oh, you're going to be our Aragorn? And I was like, and we had started answering a question from the audience, and we kind of got like derailed somewhat. You were asking like where our character motivations came from. I specifically was like, I'm not going to play an Aragorn stand-in. I'm going to make like a caveman or something. I don't want to, because I don't want to be compared too strongly to the, you know, the already existing
I just
protagonist.
like to chime in on that. I don't think you were.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that
I don't think I
Anduin
was either.
Not
Yeah,
Aragorn.
Anduin was the zone.
No,
yeah.
no, he wasn't, because I specifically didn't want to. I didn't want to be budget Aragorn. I didn't want people to watch the show.
In this timeline, Aragorn is budget Aragorn right now. Like, Aragorn is not aware of his own abilities.
I didn't want people to finish watching Ashes or even get like into Ashes and then be like 3 episodes in and be like, look at this guy trying to be Aragorn. He's never going to be Viggo Mortensen. What a loser. So that's why I was like, no, I'm going to make like an Outlander, kind of a caveman character who might have some of the same qualities, be kind of Ranger-esque in the sense that I live out in the wild, but like Aragorn's this inspiring leader of men, and I was like, I'm just gonna make a sulking like caveman, kind of much less eloquent and much more likely to just answer you with a grunt kind of a character, which admittedly I failed at, because by the end of it, but I struggle to play dumb caveman brutish characters because like my own personality starts to take over at some point and override the decisions. Like if I try to play a dumb character that's going to run into the room, even though I know, oh, we're going to lose this fight if I run in there. It's like these emergency brakes slam on in the back of my head. It's like, no, that's not smart. You can't do that. And so, of course,
failed. No, at all.
No, you didn't.
Compare like the first few episodes to the last few episodes, and you will see the difference.
That's what I was going to say. You had something to live for, whereas before you really didn't.
Maybe I will begrudgingly accept the compliment or accept it as character growth, but really it was just my own personality starting to take over the character.
Shall we experience the moment when Mirggles found out that she has something to live for?
Oh yeah, and then
yes.
So,
yes, go ahead.
So you all probably, if you want to watch this, should turn on the stream if you haven't done so.
Oh yeah.
And I'll leave your mics live. So just be aware of that.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the invite that I sent to Mirggles.
Oh.
And now, Mirggles' reaction. Prepare yourself.
That's a pretty sick invite letter, not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, what was mine?
Dude.
Yeah, why didn't I get a cool letter? I just got a DM from
You're
Brad.
not going to react the way that Mirggles does. Oh, God. Hold on. All right, here we go.
Okay. I'm watching this thing that Whack has sent me. Pumpkinberry has told me to record my reaction. Let's see how it goes.
Your brow.
The realization.
Pause.
stop. Is it Lord of the Rings?
Tears already welling.
Oh no. No. Oh no. No. This is what a happy person looks like, by the way, apparently. Oh no.
You look like someone died.
She looks and then hides again.
Okay, well, yeah, obviously, fucking hate you, love you, bye.
Okay, well, yeah, obviously.
So good.
Oh God. Oh, it was so good. Oh man.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So thank you everybody for telling me your character motivations for making your characters.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
No.
Yes.
What the hell?
Hmm?
Are
Well,
we?
it's
We
yours,
never, we
Meyer
never,
hasn't
we,
gone yet.
the
Meyer
rest of us
hasn't gone
answered. Meyer hasn't
Yeah.
gone yet. He still needs
Yep.
to answer that. And I was finishing mine, if you don't mind. The like if you compare the beginning of the campaign where you have like, I tried to keep Anduin as this gruff, like wilderness character that like would half the time just like answer with grunts, but then by the end of the show he's like freaking turned into this warrior poet, waxing poetic at every opportunity. And that's just because I completely and utterly fail every time I try to. That's like my third or fourth attempt at playing like a primitive, dumb, brutish barbarian character, and it's my third or fourth failure at maintaining that stereotype to the end, because they always end up turning into some sort of well-spoken leader character. At some point, I think I'm just going to give up trying and just embrace what I'm better at anyway. All right, go ahead, Meyer. I want to hear yours.
I mean, when it comes to RP for me, I mean, like, I like to do it like golf, just play it where it lies. When it comes to like backstory and stuff, I really don't do much. With Lord of the Rings, because of the IP and how big it was, I made a concession. I read all of The Hobbit before like episode 1. And I decided, because, you know, I liked Durin and Rings of Power, that I was going to be a dwarf. The only other thing I did was, like, I looked up the Icelandic for rust, which was Ryuth, which is why he's called Ryuth and why his horse is called Rusty, and I got
Oh,
this.
wow.
And
Dude, you
everything
were
else I
using
just-
Icelandic too?
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's great.
And yeah, like essentially like everything else, like all the knowledge that came from, you know, Ryuth and, you know, the Battle of Aznalbizar, I was pulling, I just did that on the fly as we went, based on, because I read the, you know, the Lord of the Rings books over Christmas, so I just did it that way. But yeah, I always feel bad because I feel like it's not necessarily how it's done. You know, everybody else is like, you know, I like to just roleplay on the fly, I think, because I do a lot of it in things like Wild RP anyway. But yeah.
PB, go warm up your food, because we're probably gonna go right
Oh,
up.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wax,
Mark.
like, you bastard, you put it up to chance, how dare you?
No, I'm not at all. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned over the years doing this now for over 14,000 hours, according to Roll20, is since 2012, is that you should not be too rigid in anything that you've written. It's much better to do bullet points than it is to do any sort of hard lore. You're not writing a novel, you're telling a collaborative story with other people. So I always advise making cool set pieces or snippets, like things that you can insert into other areas so that you can still tell the story that you want to tell, but it doesn't center on you. It centers on the group. That's just one of those things that I'll always recommend to people.
Yeah, I mean, usually I write a shit ton. I didn't do hardly anything for Lawton. I really wanted to try that. Outside of us deciding that we knew each other and seeing the guy in the beginning of Lord of the Rings, I didn't give him I didn't give Lawton anything. Everything was on the fly. Even his parents' names were on the fly. It's freeing to do that. It's different. I love creating information and story and history and weaving it. I love that. But this was a neat opportunity to just be just a dude. Just a hobbit dude. Yeah.
I'm gonna get real deep about this for a second. I find it interesting because I did the exact same thing. So we need to hear from Pumpkinberry to see how like deep she went with her lore. But I did the same thing. I picked out my parents' names, and that was basically it. Like, I have a document for her, and it's just like her parents' names and nothing else. And so what I like about it is that the hobbits are like these characters that are unburdened. Yeah, they're unburdened. They have a level of peace and happiness in their lives. They have long family histories and things, but they don't have anything that's, being carried with them, like lineage of like horrible experiences or curses, or, the dwarves have this like the hallmark thing that happened in their past that, forced them into diaspora and just kind of that sort of thing. So I do like the idea that the hobbits of our group came into this with a free sense of wonder and not having anything set in stone and not being like carrying all of this stuff behind them. And then our characters who were, not in the Shire and not hobbits were characters that kind of like had this sort of deep, rich history ingrained in who they were. I think it really suits them, to be honest.
I do too.
Yeah, I agree.
Fairlight, I mean, like, when it came to your character, obviously, when it comes down to lineage, before your transformation, you gave us like maybe like 7 forefathers. Like, was that always pre-written or what?
No, not all of them. The first 2 generations and the most recent 2 generations I already had written out because I wrote the beginning and the end of the story. And then I was like, okay, well, there's like 300 years of blank space here in the middle.
Right.
And so like nearing the end of the story, I kind of like, I knew that I was going to have him like transform at some point towards the end of the story, or at least I knew I was going to attempt it if Whack allowed it. And I wasn't sure when it would happen exactly, but I'd say like 9 or 10 episodes from the end is where I kind of had this idea. I was like, yeah, he's going to probably transform, and it's going to involve like finally reconciling himself with all of his ancestors and like basically coming to terms with what he really is and who he is. And then I thought, it'd be interesting. I actually, there's a scene in Mass Effect where Shepard names off from memory every ship that was destroyed in one of the battles. I forget which one it is. It's been too long since I played. But I remember like someone tries to put him on the spot, and he impresses them by turning around and immediately like rattling off all these names that he's memorized. And I always liked that scene from Mass Effect. That was where I got the idea. I was like, well, what if I just rattled off my entire genealogy off the top of my head? So I had the list of names made in advance for that. But yeah, the whole family tree wasn't spelled out from the beginning, just like the framework of it. I try to approach like character story and character creation as kind of, think of it like a painting or a drawing, but I do the important, like the sketch, the frame, the outline is there first, and then the rest of the little details just get filled out along the way, and the genealogy was one that just got filled out towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, like even like from episode 1, I had his father, mother, all 5 of his siblings. I had the tribe of Beorn separated into 9 distinct clans, and each clan had
Jesus Christ.
Just the framework.
I knew at some point people keep asking me, look, people keep asking me this stuff anyway, and I think I've seen my name highlighted like 4 times in the Twitch chat, so I know the question's coming up anyway. So I'm just going off script and answering it right now. I had his father, mother, like 5 siblings. I had the history of his tribe written back like 500 years, split them into 9 clans, and then each clan I have listed a leader and a champion, like based on, I decided that they would have like their chief and then their champion in matters of like, you know, if it came down to a disagreement, the champions would fight. Beyond that, the leaders make the decisions. And then I had the names of each leader and each champion for each of the 9 clans. And then each clan also, I gave their specialty of like their role of what they did. So there was like one group was like the sages and seers, the learned people. And then they had one group that was the craftsmen and the builders, and then they had another clan that was renowned as their archers and scouts. So basically these 9 clans all had their own distinct purpose and leadership traits and all that. So that was all the stuff that I had from the start.
So then as outline, you mean like stained glass, you know, without the color, as opposed to
So
more like Picasso, that I had all this random stuff thrown in, and then over the course of the adventure, I filled in like the rest of the detail that was missing.
Do you know what mind maps are?
I have no idea.
So
like a mind palace?
Well, no.
Sherlock.
I'm gonna show you after we're done. I'll show you something. A mind map is basic. It's not a flow chart. It's just kind of a visual representation of lots of different ideas and like sort of branching off from those ideas. It's just for some people it's easier to see a visual of bullet points kind of like laid out and the relations to others. It just when you said this, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a mind map, because it's something that I've started to do for shows, and that's like showing relationships with other characters, and you can kind of draw it in a visual way. It's just something that I thought of when you were saying that.
Yeah, that's
might
just
be interested in.
I think that's just how my daily life functions, exactly that way. But I will say this might help understand my person more so than what necessarily I did write. What I didn't write is also, I think, kind of important part of the process. Like I mentioned the 9 clans and how I had a framework and all that. Well, think of it this way. 7 of those clans have names and specialties. I intentionally left 2 of them blank, as I typically do whenever I make a character, so that over the course of the adventure, if I needed to adapt some part of it to add on to a story beat that Whack introduced, or if I get the impression that Whack is fishing for something in particular, I can say, oh yeah, that's the 8th clan. Yeah, and I will just drop it on the spot. And then after I drop it on the spot, I just go back into my notes and then like, all right, well, this was the 8th clan all along. And that's not just, and it's not just in the clans.
Right there, what he just described.
I guess I GM my characters rather than play them. I don't know, but that's like how I have always approached my characters that way, and so far, I feel like I've gotten positive feedback from every GM I've ever worked with on it, because the way that I design them is specifically put together so that whichever way you try to steer the story as the GM, oh yeah, it turns out that's exactly how my character was written all along, because I left that part blank on purpose so I could fill it in later with whatever the story called for.
Mm-hmm. It's a good plan. It's a good plan. All right, we're getting close to the end of our time here. I want to wrap things up with questions that our cast has. Any questions that you have that you want to ask each other or me or whatever. If anybody wants to start off.
I have a question.
Sure.
I want to know. Okay, this is a very silly question, but I want to know. Mirggles wants to know.
Silly music.
Okay. I mean, it's not really a silly question, but I would like to know Launton and Toddle's graph of how much they regretted leaving the Shire, and if they were like, we should just leave this girl behind. What do we gotta do to get her back? I want to know how much they regretted going.
Oof. Definitely not a silly question, by the way.
I know, that's why I gotta change it.
So deep.
Well, because the silly question, I think I could argue that it's a silly question for many reasons, but
I think. Well, PP, do you want to take a stab at this? I have an idea.
I'm gonna abstain.
You're gonna.
Oh, yep. I feel like we hinted at some things during the show And then we left it, and I like where we left it. That's all.
Okay.
Get wrecked.
Okay. Well, I mean, you feel free to expand on it, but I
agree.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, that's good.
Sorry, Mirgs. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Just never sleeping.
Wow,
I
what
also
a
know the way
waste
that your
of a
brain
question,
works.
Mirggles. Okay,
No. Hold up.
Because
Because I also know the way that her brain works. And what Mirggles is asking is how guilty do I need to feel about ruining these two characters' lives? And I just refuse to fuel that part of your brain. Absolutely not.
That is exactly how I interpreted it too.
Yeah. Refuse. Do not engage.
Also, did Gandalf give me an A?
Did
Never
Gandalf
mind.
give you
That's
an
a
A?
No, it's a joke when you go to therapy and you want an A in therapy because that's a normal thing to want. Anyway, cool. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I'm gonna mute now, and I can't wait to hear your questions.
Don't leave. I do have a question.
Sure.
Are you happy?
Like, in life?
I knew Mirgs was going to answer that.
Are you
What are
happy
you asking?
with how the show went? Start to finish, no explanation, yes or no. Are you happy?
Oh yeah, 100,000,000%, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, Maya, yeah?
Yeah.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yep, same.
Yeah.
So here's where I say I'm going to answer honestly.
Sure.
So I'm almost never happy with the way that a show goes.
Okay.
I always feel like I should have done more. I could have done more. I could have done better. Always. I don't think I've ever done a show where I'm like, wow, I really hit the nail on the head. I don't think I've ever felt that way. Not once. And I think a lot of GMs feel like that. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I think I could have done that better.
Sure.
Maybe it's the artist in me as well. But I always think about that stuff. So I always think, yeah, I wish I did the first half differently. I wish I did session zeros for this show where we really got into why we're doing the things that we're doing. So stuff like that. Am I happy with the way you all performed? Absolutely. But me? No. I always feel like I could have done better.
And that's the GM burden, right?
Yeah.
I end up with the same feeling after basically every session, even the ones that feel like they got about as close to perfect as possible. I always sit there thinking, oh, like, no matter how close it was, there's always something to nitpick. So I feel you on that one. Like, oh man, I stumbled over that one word at exactly 12 minutes in. Like, I got tongue-tied for a quarter of a second. I ruined the whole performance. So it's easy to be hard on yourself. It's the perfectionism showing, but we appreciate the effort you put in, Wack. You did a fantastic job with it, even if you're unwilling to admit that to yourself. I'll say it for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I can't relate.
It's
pretty okay, I think.
It's a beautiful it's a beautiful piece of art. It really
Thank you,
is.
buddy. Thank you. Any other questions from you all?
Shiniko seems to have one that they've tried to repeat.
You
You answered that one?
I
Okay,
still have a bunch of from like the audience, but I don't think we're
Okay.
going to get to all of them because there's a lot
that's fair.
left.
There's a lot.
I've seen like 20 questions to go by that I thought I'd love to answer that, but time is a
Yeah.
thing.
But any questions from you all? Any other last questions? Okay.
No.
If that's the case, there's one last thing then.
Okay.
Oh.
We got a gift from Last Socratic. And you should all probably turn on the stream for this.
Okay.
Gift.
Hmm. Let me know when you're all ready. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. Here we go.
Well, hello. And this is a little message for Toddles and Launton, of course. Nice to see you back in the Shire.
No!
I hear there's been quite an adventure. Would that be a D&D adventure? Don't know. Anyway, I know that you're coming back with Gandalf back into the Shire. I'm sure we've got a proud foot and a thread good, of course. And lovely to see you guys back. Shame that the cousin, Piper, isn't with you. I take it Piper is off on an adventure, as Tooks do, of course. Reached their 33rd birthday. Very special birthday for hobbits. I'm sure you already know that, Toddles and Launton. And I can only wish you all the best, and I hope you enjoy being back at the Shire. Don't forget to get your second breakfast. Very, very important, of course. And I look forward to hearing about your next adventure. Lots of love to you all. All the best. And well done on a fantastic adventure. Lots of love from a fool of a Took. All the best.
Nice.
Was that Gandalf?
Yeah, that was Gandalf.
I just had to break the mood because Mirggles looks like she'd witnessed a murder.
She's now Piper shook.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Thank you. I don't. That was something special. And I'll speak for my two other hobbits. As best as I can. That's incredible. I love that. I need that, please. I want to show people.
Absolutely.
Didn't Toddles thread good just come out of his mouth? Oh my god!
I sat there and I was like, okay, so he's talking to us. We just came back and we're not going to tell him everything. As if whoever this hobbit is that we're talking to, we can't tell him everything. So we'll smile and nod and shake his hand and then go get that second breakfast.
Okay, I want everyone to know like what a Herculean effort I'm currently doing to like pull myself together so that this doesn't end on like a full dissociate. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I need like I need like 2 to 3 business weeks to like comprehend what I just did.
Thank you so much for the wonderful gift.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
That was really cool.
I don't mean just Last Socratic. I mean to my wonderful cast. Thank you so much for this wonderful gift. And thank you to our wonderful audience for this wonderful gift. Taking us all out on our intro music. Thank you so much for this fellowship and this wonderful adventure, everybody.
Bye for now.
We'll post our questions for the chat and everything in Discord. Come hang out on our Discord, tablestory.tv/Discord. And we will have plenty of fun stuff going on tomorrow with the Shill Show, 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be playing Baldur's Gate 3. Make sure to check it out. It helps keep the lights on here at Tablestory. And we'll try and answer all of your questions in our Discord. Come check it out. And we'll see you next time for another adventure. Peace out.
Have you more cheese?
Terrible name, Edward.
Terrible name.